for mine.
Testing. Oh, you might have to mute yours.
Well, I can unmute myself.
Yeah, but then,
You'll have to mute.
yeah,
See if no units found. Give it a second, 1908.
can you guys hear now?
Oh, she's back up.
Yeah.
Testing.
Can you hear now, you guys?
No echo.
I can hear you, Patty, but cannot hear the chamber other than the echo.
You're not echoing anymore.
Okay, is it work now? It works now? Can you
Yep.
guys hear?
All right.
All right, Christine, go ahead and talk.
Sorry about that.
So then the other, I don't really call it capital improvement, but another big project going on right now is the active transportation plan that will also be at no cost to the borough. That's part of WalkWorks, something that Trish has been working on. And then we have park improvements. This one, we just got notice that we did get part of the money. We got $75,000 instead of the 184,000. So that will bring the local match down considerably. This is a project that, based on the timing, Matt said can be moved to 2023. So that's a possibility. And then the last capital improvement that you can see on this table is the website rebuild. I found a company that builds websites for government entities. This is their specialty. It's what they do. They're able to do it for $5,000. It's actually a little under $5,000. And they allow municipalities to pay over 3 years. So it'd be about $1,700 a year. And then you'd start paying is basically as soon as the website goes live, that's when they invoice you, and it's due, first payment soon after that. And then
What's that?
The police would go out at 301 Washington Avenue, Clinton.
Okay,
okay.
I had to mute Patty.
And then the last thing I want to bring up here, this is not included in the budget. And we can probably use ARPA money for it. We are working toward regionalization of our sanitary sewer system with Alcosan. And Matt is still working with Alcosan to figure out what that would fully entail for us to turn over our main sewer lines to Alcosan for them to maintain going forward. But before Alcosan will take ownership of them, they need to be a certain level of condition. And so we will likely have some repairs that need to be made. And Matt is estimating 40 to 50,000, but that's not firm yet because he's still working with Alcosan to figure out what really needs done. And again, this is not included in the budget because we don't have enough information. And again, we can likely use ARPA funds because this is a sewer system project. And then there were a lot of other capital improvement projects that are not included in the budget. I'm not going to read all of these, but just to kind of show you the efforts that went into this, you know, thinking about capital improvements, talking to different department heads, figuring out what's needed. I mean, there's really a lot coming up that's going to need done. And I just wanted to give you a flavor and to show you what people have been working on. When we look to revenues, excuse me, we have just under $1.7 million estimated coming into the general fund, $960,000 estimated coming into the sewer fund, about $70,000 coming into liquid fuels, and then the ARPA money, we got 126,000 and change in 2021, and then that same amount will be coming in 2022, and then all combined, little over $2.8 million. And so when we look at where the revenues come from, perhaps not surprisingly, sewer fees constitute a large percentage of revenue at just under 30%. But keep in mind that the vast majority of that heads right out to pay Alcosan. Then we have real estate taxes at 27.3% of our revenues. And then we're down into earned income tax and local service tax at just under 12%. Those intergovernmental revenues at about 10% and the state shared revenue at just under 8%. Those are largely state revenues. And then that ARPA is the federal. And again, just a reminder that receiving federal dollars is pretty rare. And then, you know, miscellaneous other small things like, you know, parking tickets and business licenses and dumpster permits and so on and so forth. And of course, liquid fuels in there. So when we talk about the financial position of the borough, I have a lot of this table covered up right now, and I just want to talk about the general fund for 1 second. So at the end of 2021, we're estimated to have a fund balance of basically negative $52,000. And I just want to point out that this is significantly improved over 2020, when the fund balance was negative $221,000. So a lot of good things have actually happened to improve the fund balance since the end of 2020. And I just really want to highlight that because I think this is a hard conversation. And I just want to highlight that while this is still negative, it is a lot less negative than it was last year. So when we talk about the fund balance, what we're taking at the end of 2022, what we're doing is taking the fund balance that I'm estimating at the end of this year, 2021, and then we're going to add to it any estimated revenues that are supposed to come in 2022, and then we'll subtract out anything that's an expenditure going out in 2022, and then that arithmetic equals our estimated fund balance at the end of 2022. So then I'll just reveal the whole table, and you'll see that these three fund balances, sewer fund, liquid fuels, and ARPA is not really a fund, but we'll just pretend it is for a second. Those ones are all positive. The one that we really need to talk about tonight is the general fund. And if we want to spend all of the expenditures that are proposed in the budget, then we end up with a fund balance estimated at negative $370,000. And so some of this is review from last time, but I did add a little information. So just a reminder that when it comes to real estate taxes, 1 mil is the same thing as $1 paid in taxes for every $1,000 in assessed value. And again, the current millage rate is 7.8 mils. So for every $1,000 in assessed value, the property owner pays $7.80. And I just want to point out that while the tax bill that any one household pays is based on millage and the assessed value, the assessed values are set by the county, which means the borough just doesn't have control and can't pull that lever to reassess properties. We're really stuck on the millage side of things. And I know sometimes people do get reassessed, particularly when you move into the borough. That's when you frequently get reassessed. But that, again, that's not something we really have control over. And so how much is a 1 mil tax increase for a typical home? Again, as a reminder, the median assessed value is $50,400. And that's the middle value home, not the average value, it's the middle value. So half of households or half of the homes are assessed under $50,400 and half are assessed more than $50,400. So that 1 mil increase is about $50 for the middle house. If your home is assessed less than $50,400, then you pay less. And if it's more, then obviously the tax bill is more. And a 1 mil tax increase brings about $100,000 to the borough based on current tax collection rates. Since the last presentation, I was able to go through our data from Keystone Collections, which is the company that we pay to collect our real estate taxes. And the tax collection rate is actually quite good. You know, like 92 to 94% over the last couple of years. We're already at 91%. And that was with 2 months of tax collection to go. And based on historical data, there usually is a bump in November, December, where we bring in about another $20,000, in a good year, $25,000 in tax revenue, property tax revenue, right? Basically, as the property taxes would go delinquent, people are paying their tax bills. So we should expect a little bump. But the point of all that is just to say that there's little revenue capacity in increasing our efforts to collect current year property taxes. Just to review earned income taxes. So this is 1% of earned income, and half of it goes to the school district and half of it goes to the borough. And the Pennsylvania Borough Code prohibits the borough from having an EIT rate that's higher than 0.5%. So again, there's no additional revenue capacity into earned income taxes. We're maxed out. Here's a bright spot. So Alcosan did announce that sewer rates are increasing 7% for 2022 and an additional 7% for each of 2023, 24, 25, and 26. However, there's enough of a buffer in the current sewer rate that it is recommended to have no increase in sewer rates for Verona residents in 2022. And this saves the average household about $35.60 per year. And that's based on 12,000 gallons per quarter. So then there are a couple of policies that still need to be determined because, you know, that's council's prerogative to legislate policy, and I'm here on the implementation side. We do need to decide on a minimum fund balance policy. So that negative $370,000 that I highlighted in the red oval a few slides ago, if we were somehow able to cut things or raise revenue exactly to that negative 360,000, whatever it was, that means our fund balance would be zero. That means that, you know, New Year's Eve next year, if everything went exactly as planned, we would have $0 in the bank. And I don't know that I'm advocating for that. So we need to have a conversation about what do you all think the minimum fund balance should be? One place to start is to have a minimum of 5% of operating expenses. Though there are other options such as having 3 months worth of expenses or, any other number of ideas. I think the important thing is to have the conversation about it. Think about, what makes sense, what's reasonable, maybe what's the target, but where do we start, that kind of thing, so that we can start to position ourselves stronger for 2022 as well as subsequent years. We also need to discuss a sewer fund repayment policy, how much and over what length of time. And then, of course, policies associated with expenditure cuts. And so what is meant by a policy associated with cutting expenditures? And I just want to say that budgeting really is not an exercise in making a spreadsheet. It's when the community makes explicit its priorities. So for example, and I'm not advocating this, I'm just giving an example. If we just say, let's cut the rock salt budget, well, then what we're implicitly saying is if we cut it entirely, then we will only plow roads, we would never salt the roads. Or if we cut it in half, what we're saying is our policy is to only salt the hills and not the flats. And I don't know that anybody is saying that, but my point is it's easy to cut money, just change the number, and then all of a sudden the negative 370 is not negative 370 anymore. But it means that there are operations tied to that, or there are projects tied to that. And when we start, trimming things, we just need to be conscious of what we're really trimming, because honestly, the budget is already very lean. It's a very lean budget. And so when we start making cuts, these are cuts in operations. And so we need to decide what's important, what level of service do we want to provide, like taxpayer money in whatever form it comes in, fines, fees, whatever, all of those things directly translate to level of service. And so that's what we need to decide. Well, we collectively, but you as the legislating body need to decide, how do you want the borough to operate? How do you want the borough to be positioned for down the road? And so I reiterate, budgeting is not an exercise in this spreadsheet. It is when this community is coming together as a community and making explicit its priorities about how it wants to function and operate and serve the residents of Verona. And so next we're going to be leading into a discussion led by Susan Hockenberry. And Susan, do you want me to just say what you're going to do, or do you want to say what you're going to do with the slide up here?
Well, it says what we're gonna do.
What we're gonna do.
So as Christine mentioned, this is a tough conversation. It's an important conversation, right? It's a meaningful conversation. I think you're gonna build connections as a board so you can function really well in the future with the community. So this is the beautiful part about local government, right? We roll up our sleeves and we tackle the challenges and opportunities for our community and get stuff done. So my role as a facilitator is I like to use this process called a thinking round, which that was a lot. First of all, that was a fantastic presentation, Christine.
Thank you.
It was wonderful. I learned a lot, and it reflects a lot of work. So I call this a thinking round, and it's intentionally to get everybody's just response out on the table, right? You're thinking right now. So specifically to call each member of council and say, what's on your mind as you process, and the mayor, as you process what's been presented here. And then I like to document that. And then I like to hear from the members of the public, any employees that are here, anyone else that has comments. And then I'm going to assume that as that discussion ensues, maybe some of your views change, or maybe you have something you'd like to add. And that's what we're calling the precious thing. So we'll do a round, we'll hear from everybody, then we'll do a round again, right? And then from that point, Christine, I call it running the tape. She said, what's a tape? She thought it meant a tape measure. If you're old like me and you had a 10-key calculator, you know what a tape is, right? It rolls. I said, we're going to run the tape and see what progress you can all make towards this goal of balancing a budget as an exercise similar to what we did virtually back in April when you had to do cuts, right? Similar kind of thing. So that's what I'm here to do tonight, is just to facilitate that and be real intentional about the conversation. Sound good? I have my marker, I have my flip chart here to make some notes. And are we ready to dive in? Any questions?
I just want to note that our sound is not set up as usual, but I do think that having this will help. I think we're bringing in the sound through here.
Currently, yeah, it is through the laptop. So if we want to use that, we'll have to go to this. Do we want to use the microphone?
But when we put it on that before, then they couldn't hear us,
Can
right?
we test?
Because we
speaking from
didn't
across
have
the
this
table to
microphone
see
out.
if-
Okay. Try that. Okay, guys, on the chat, let me know if you can hear this. Or just unmute yourself and say if you can hear on Zoom. Hello, anybody there? Is everyone sleeping? Yes, thank you, Chris. So whoever's talking, I mean, you don't have to have it like this, but if you just hold on to this, that'll help. It's like-
So hold it up to your.
Oh, is that better, Jen? Okay. Yes, okay, so we'll have to share this.
Let's start with somebody who's not the president of council.
Oh,
How's
very
that?
good, good.
Trish, would you like to go first?
Oh geez, no pressure. Hi.
And it isn't any pressure. It's just, again, you're thinking, you got a big spreadsheet in front of you, you've had a great presentation. What's on your mind? What you thinking about? What you heard so far?
Yeah, welcome everyone. So this is Trish. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what a wonderful presentation Christine kicked us off with. We obviously have some really hard decisions. I think I vocalized before that I'm really against increasing the taxes, at least for next year. Coming out of COVID, I still think it's really hard for a lot of families to take that on. We do have, some people that are really in the lower socioeconomic status, that could be a big impact, especially like I said, coming out of the pandemic, where some people are still underemployed or not making the same. So that's the main thing on my mind. But yeah, as Christine already said, we have a pretty lean budget. I have some questions and some thoughts that I'm sure we'll get into later, as all of you do. So I'm excited to hear what everyone else has to say as well.
What are some of those questions, Trish?
Okay, do we really want to talk about that now? Because that could take a while.
Let's get them out there. They're not going to necessarily get answered, but just what's on your mind.
Okay, so there was like a sewer rental somewhere that I didn't see reflected.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest that whenever we bring up a line, say the number.
Okay.
So we can find it.
Well,
I'm actually going to set the rules, different set of rules on that. So the sewer fund is a separate fund. So but we're going to clarify that. But you're talking about the sewer rental fee, Trish, and then also the payment to Alcoasand. You have clarity around that?
yeah, I think it was a sewer rental fee. It was less than before, and I recognize that's sewer related, but just kind of wondering what the decrease was. There's a couple other items like, okay, here's a line item 331-170 parking tickets. So we were at 28,000 for 2020, and it looks like 2022 is, if I'm reading things correct, that's significantly less, like 3,000.
So in addition to additional information for that, I guess what I'd ask you, are there anything in those questions that you think are significant relative to the 370 number?
Okay. Okay, so I guess, with ARPA, one thing I had brought up the last meeting is reducing or postponing our repayment to the sewer fund by 1 year. So since ARPA can't be used for the general fund, if we use ARPA to pay for anything sewer related, could we count that as a repayment to sewer? Do you understand what I'm? No, okay. All right.
Okay, thank you, Trish. I made a note of that.
Okay.
All the questions on the table, a delay, the timing.
Okay,
Like,
That's perfect.
Did I capture it?
yes, you did. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for
Yeah.
going first.
Yeah.
Sylvia, would you like to go next? No.
We can go this way to the mayor.
Sure, no problem. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you. I too, looking not to raise taxes if we, can, looking through some of the things, expenditures, just seeing, trying to look over and see what maybe we can cut. Not significantly, but just to make, bring that deficit down, that, to bring it down to where we can balance this budget a little bit more. And I could say it is pretty difficult. Just a couple of things I was looking at, like, maybe some changes like within the administration. With like the code enforcement, maybe we can do part of that code enforcement, give to our police department to handle. I'm not sure.
Expenditures.
Yes,
Did I get that right, Janet? So admin and code enforcement?
yes,
cost-
just
cost
looking at
reductions?
that, yes.
Did you mean admin and code enforcement or separate?
Well, that's code enforcement's under that
Okay,
administration,
gotcha. I gotcha.
and I'm not quite
What
sure.
size is that?
401, I believe 111. I'm not sure exactly what is the code enforcement under there.
Okay, that's all right.
So-
We'll keep track.
And then
Any
there's,
other cut
and
ideas?
there's something added like receptionist, so I'm not quite sure what's going on with that as well, because we've never had that before.
Okay.
And I know the mayor has been trying to get a full-time police officer, and that may be added into this budget as well. I'm not sure if we need to make a cut there. And that's what I have right now.
Good, thank you. That's all we're asking for at this point. Just your initial thoughts. Jumping in. Ray, you go.
I too want to thank Christine for this wonderful proposal. I think naturally, nobody wants a tax increase. Myself, Dave, Mr. Mallon and Mr. Warren and Christine, we had what, a 3.5-hour meeting last night? Yeah, the second one, and trying to come up with some ways to make some cuts. And we come up with some pretty good ideas. I'm sure they have I didn't get that printout, so there's a lot of proposals we have on there as far as what Trish said and as far as what Janet said. Again, we talked, as Janet talked about the receptionist, that was just put in there, I believe, that in case Christine needed some help. There's a lot of things that I'm sure Dave and Joey will go over and later on with what we were, as the finance committee talked about last night. So,
Can I summarize?
sure.
So you guys have, you've gone through this with.
We went, there was a lot of, Mr. Matlin had a list of 35 line items or something like that. And we went through all of them. And a lot of questions were answered last night as to, Christine helped us out with some of the meanings of things, and
Yeah.
so so that helped me out a lot. But again, the numbers show it, and if I'm not mistaken, and maybe Rhoda can help. There's been no tax increase in,
For a long time.
but if you remember about 3, 4, 5 years ago, we lowered the taxes
Right.
something. So, we don't wonder if we didn't hurt ourselves. Yes. I mean, we should have probably, and I'm not for tax raises, but we should have probably over the last 12 or 13, 14 years, maybe just raising them $250,000 or something to try to keep up with the inflation. And that's no dig against anybody. It's just at the time, the earned income tax was coming in, the real estate was starting to boom a little bit. We were having some extra money there. And I just think we again, to reiterate, I don't want to raise taxes, but we possibly screwed ourselves around a little.
Yeah. Sort of that pattern, that long view you're bringing to the discussion. So thank you, Rick.
3 or 4 years ago.
So back in way long ago, like 15 or so years ago, I don't know the exact dates. Our tax rate was 6.9, something like that. Then about 9 years ago or 10 years ago, it was raised to 8. I was not involved. I don't know if you remember that, when that happened, Rhoda, when it went up to 8. It stayed at 8 for several years. And then there was, remember that county-wide reassessment of everybody in the county? It was a mess. Well, it happened to all the little boroughs around Allegheny County. And there is this statute called the anti-windfall statute. And you can't like make a profit off of them changing the property values in your town. And because of the anti-windfall statute, we were sort of required to lower it from 8% to 7.8. And that's why it got lowered. But to your point, Ray, I think then starting then, had we had a better picture of what was really going on, we could have gone up 0.2 or 0.25 for the last 5 years. And, you know, but we didn't know, nobody knew. So.
Thank you, that's good history.
Well, the whole sanitary sort of fund was a good thing too, but it wasn't tracked right.
Right.
If it would have been tracked right, we wouldn't have been in this, we wouldn't have been in this position. The whole sanitary fund wasn't tracked right. And I think that was something new and we just didn't do it. You know, I didn't happen to be on. I don't think you happened to be on at the time. I think Rhoda introduced that to get that going, which is a good thing, but we didn't track it right. And we were using the money just to keep, we had money at the end of the year, you know, not realizing that should have been going to a separate fund. So along with that, I too would like to maybe, I mean, we talked last night about the sanitary fund. I'm wondering if we couldn't work on that a little bit too, but that's already done.
You mean the timing of the reimbursement?
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I'm gonna exert my prerogative as to say, let's stick with the plan. You guys are a good conversation. Let's get one loop around and then go ahead, Joe.
So as the newest member of council, I think that my initial thoughts are, I appreciate this process, the work that Christine's put into it, and literally being at the table tonight. I don't know that this step's been taken that I'm aware of in years past, but just by process, I appreciate doing this. As Ray had said, we've had multiple meetings. I think the last 2 were over 3 hours to go line by line. And $370,000 is a large amount. And my initial thoughts are, start plucking away at dozens of lines that are $2,000, $4,000, $6,000 each. You're going to take away a lot of things to where we don't want to cripple ourselves. So I think any expectation that we, make this leaner, like this is the bare bones to operate. But at the same time, I believe Verona being a renaissance, which is why my family moved here 3 years ago. And we're getting ready to make a turn to where we can make some incremental changes with millage or whatever it happens to be for these amenities we want to sustain for these functions of a municipality that we want to, have more families move in, more businesses stay or invest in our community that I think can easily be done. I very much look forward to a conversation. I forget what your third step was. I think it was the refresh, but where we kind of revisit what was my first stance on this.
Yeah, we're gonna get that.
Yeah.
One time around here.
Sure, but that is what I look forward to because I think for some of these, I don't want to hold a hard line on anything I think right now. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So I hope I got that right, Joey. What I said was, we start plugging away, it's crippling, sort of death by 1,000 cuts almost.
Yes.
And then I call it renaissancing. I don't know if that can be a verb, but I turned it into one. And so sort of investing in the future is good time for Verona. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. You want me to?
Give more?
Yeah. And I think at this point too, just together as one council, having the discipline to have this uncomfortable conversation, but also know that this doesn't have to be a huge leap. This can be incremental changes that can make sure that we're on a steady road to be, out of the red. If I believe we're at $250,000 at New Year's Eve last year, and we're negative 250 or whatever it was. This year at negative 51,000. So we're trending in a good spot. I just don't want to at this point pause and just think we're going to cut multiple lines and being at zero is the goal. Like we need to be beyond that.
Okay, so you want reserve. Reserve is important.
Yes.
Is that right? You want to be beyond zero. Is that right?
Correct. And
I will also say, I mean, since we're all mentioning it, I think there's not a person at the table that wouldn't say this. I don't want to increase millage. I don't think anyone ever wants to increase millage. I want to be responsible. I want to be a good steward of the dollars of our community. And, you know, I just want to state that because it's being said by, I believe, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine, for the excellent presentation. And for the other council members that spoke already, there's a lot of good comments and feedback already. I'm really looking forward to this process, this discussion. You know, like Joey mentioned, I'm going into this with open eyes, open ears. I really want to hear what the rest of council has to say, and Mayor and Christine, and what the public has to say about, you know, what their priorities are, our priorities are as a community. And so I really want to emphasize that. And I do like the process that we're following this year. I do think this is a vast improvement over past years. And I too would like to not raise millage, raise property taxes, but as was kind of presented, Christine's presentation, we have limited options to raising revenue. And really when you drill down into the budget, really the only option for raising revenue, other than maybe some one-time, you know, sale of equipment, you know, such as, you know, like we've already sold a couple police cars this year. There really isn't any other option to raise more revenue. And our revenue is projected to go down a little bit this year, I think, maybe partly due to the real estate market changes. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but you know, we're not seeing the revenue increasing, you know, in the next year, or even probably the next 2 or 3 years, in any great amount. So we're kind of stuck. And I think it's been mentioned before that, you know, we have a structural deficit that we've set ourselves up operationally for kind of a lifestyle that is making it difficult to afford. And it's exacerbated by the fact that, if everyone remembers back in, you know, in the spring, late winter, when we uncovered the sewer fund issues, you know, we were basically plugging the general fund with sewer fund money, which we can't do anymore. And that was, I don't know the exact numbers. I mean, that was probably 200 to 300. There's at least a couple hundred. The amount each year we were using 200,000, you know, so I'm really open to creative ways to solve this problem we have. And again, like Ray and Joey mentioned, we had a really nice discussion, the 4 of us last night. We really drilled down into almost every line of the budget, trying to find any possible way. And what we did find, and I agree with Susan or Christine's statement earlier, that this is a very lean budget already as far as expenditures. And I'm looking forward to some problem solving here.
I circled no more plugs. Or a plug in the budget. I hope that's okay. I'm
Yep.
running out of space over there.
Yep.
At some point I'm gonna need pieces of paper. Sylvia, would you like to go now before Nancy? And then Nancy and Dave?
Thank you, Christine, for a wonderful presentation. That took a lot of work. Thank you. I've looked at these numbers. I'm not a financial wizard by no means, but they're also important. You just wonder, where do you really do your cuts? I don't know. I know things will have to be cut. Okay, thank you. I don't know where you can do cuts. To me, all of this seems very important. And certainly like everyone else, I don't want to see taxes raised either. I don't know where we're going to go with that, but everything to me looks very important. I know we have to trim, but at this moment, I don't know where. I'm at a loss.
Sylvia, I think you were very succinct. You said it is all important, right? And if you're gonna trim, I heard you say trim is important, but in terms of the budget, you didn't see a throwaway project in there, is that right? Need to trim.
I know we need to trim. I'm just not
Right.
sure where this is going to go because all of this is important to some degree.
Yeah.
So it's going to take work.
You're doing it, that's what the cookies are for, right? You guys work it all into the night. Do you have anything else you want to add?
At this moment, no.
Thanks.
Maybe
Pass it back
next-
on to Nancy or
Mayor.
Mayor?
No. go ahead. Anybody wants hand sanitizer for the mic?
I have to echo everyone and thank you, Christine, also. You did a very fine job. I don't know where to go from here. Last year, we sat here and we cut a lot of money out of the budget, a lot of line items. I know personally, out of my department, it was $70,000 that I cut out of the budget. And that included a full-time officer, which I've been trying to get for the last 10 years, another full-time officer. Where do we cut? I have no idea. Nobody wants to raise taxes. We're all in the same boat. We pay taxes as council people, as mayor. And even as business people, we all pay the taxes. Nobody wants to see them raised. But I think we also have to understand that everything goes up. Your fuel, your insurance, your electricity. It just doesn't go up at home. It goes up here too. And we need to find a happy medium, with the money. Where do we go from here? We just have to go, I guess, line by line like we did, last year at the beginning of the year and see what we can cut.
Thanks, Dave. About that, we said last year, 70K from the police, additional officer sought for the last 10 years. Line by line. Thank you. Nancy?
Yeah, not to be repetitive, but thank you, Christine. Both for this presentation and the one from a couple weeks ago. And it really helps to delineate a lot of questions that people might have. Certainly helped me out. And I don't really have much to add to everybody. We sort of seem to be in a place of saying, we really don't want to raise taxes, but where do we go from here? I personally have some specific questions of specific line items and thinking that at some point we're going to get to that. So I'm not sure what to add, except to say, maybe there's some little bit of wiggle room with how much we give back to the sewer fund, especially this first year. But I do think that in order for us to appear that we have integrity as a community to organizations out there like DCED and et cetera, where we get our grants from, we need to appear to be on the up and up and paying back our sewer fund. I think the compromise comes with how much, and then we could increase it as things get better. Anyway, I just appreciate everybody who's involved in the process. And as Joey and Dave also said, we're in a much better place than we were a year ago at -50 instead of -200 or what, 250, 150, whatever it was. So we're headed in the right direction. And this is where the hard work pays off.
Thanks, Nancy. And we will run the tape, as I said.
Good. Okay.
So what I'd like to do is I'd like to. Pardon me?
You need to
No,
use the
do I
mic.
need the mic? The
Yeah.
folks in the audience.
No, the people on Zoom can't hear you if you don't use the
I'm
mic.
done talking. So
Oh,
I would ask if you're a newly elected official, let me hear from you first, and then anybody just raise your hand and Nancy will bring you the mic.
who wants to go first? You or you?
You have any elected officials, like to hear from you.
Okay, I'm very concerned. I think it's great that you're able to, reevaluate all our expenses and that stuff. But like David said, everything's gone up, number one. Number two, I don't think we should risk the safety as far as the police. Cutting corners is great, but you have to be very, very sensible when you start cutting corners. I see no way out but to raise taxes. We have to keep up with our expenses, and like David made a good point, everything is going up. And we have to be able also, when you're talking about wiggle room, if there's an incident or something that comes up, if we're so lean on our budget, how are we going to attack or pay for something that might come up unexpectedly? And then we're going to be right back where we started. So I really, like everyone's saying, oh, I don't like raising taxes. We have to be realistic. And this, we have a small town where we are on the up, everything is working, we're moving along. But I think we have to also be very realistic.
I hope I captured that. Everything's going up, cutting corners, police, risks, public safety, there's risks with that. And I think the last thing you said there, I did put a few words in your mouth, cut, importance of a fund balance, a reserve. What if something happens, a rainy day fund?
And an example of that is 2.5 years ago, July 4th of 2019, we had a huge sinkhole appear on 2nd Street. And the general fund paid for most of that repair, I believe.
I'm not gonna sit here and repeat everything that everybody's been saying. Nobody wants tax increase, so I'm gonna wait until we go through the line items before I make comments.
Do you have any specific items of concern that you have at this point in time?
Yeah.
On the.
There's
nobody else to share this. Okay. Well, we're not, just to be clear, we're not going to go over the line items so much as sort of suggest what items could diminish that deficit.
Okay, well then,
Just the top level, if you don't mind.
there's about $50,000 that I'm looking at right now that were not accounted for, I would like to say. Like Trish brought up the parking fines.
So you're
There's $25,000 right there that was there last year that's not there this year.
What line item is that?
That is 331-170.
I want to make a point too, though, that some things that are zeroing out on the line item may have been moved to a different line item.
Well, no, there was $28,376 there last year and proposed to be 3,250. And that's a revenue. So that's $25,000. Where's that going? Are we not going to collect for parking fees in 2022?
Would you like me to respond, Susan? I'd like you to make a note of it and we can come back to that. Let's just, another high level one, if you would. Your name is Vince, right?
Yes.
I did, sorry, I didn't meet you officially.
Nice to meet you. Fines and forfeits right below it, which is 331-000.
Okay.
There's $15,000 right there. 28,937 in 2020, and in 2021, 14,850.
Okay, anything on the
Vince, that's
expense
the
side?
total. That's the total.
What are you talking?
That line, the 28,937, that's a total of all the previous.
Yes,
lines.
that's what I'm saying. So right below it, that is $15,000 for that whole section.
Anything else on the revenue? And then
No.
okay. Those are your top concerns? Thank you, okay. Comment?
Sure, why not? Jim Ashbaugh. My two comments. One, it may not seem like it's part of this topic, but I believe that it is. We need to make sure that the reason we're in this situation is addressed, or we're going to be right back here in 2, 3, 4 years with such situation, talking about why we have such a deficit. And I don't know if that situation has been addressed. I just think that was something that's very important. The other thing is we're talking about raising millages. Property values have been going up in Verona. Now to increase the millage rate on top of that, that's going to put a lot of people in a situation where they're not able to pay. And that could then reverse itself and drive down demand in our community, thereby driving down property rates. So something to consider, those two items.
Thank you. copy that down. Reason for the situation is addressed and taxes competitive rates. Is that pretty good?
That's pretty good.
Thank you. All right, anybody? Yes, sir.
Don Wharf, using one of the physics laws of physics, I think it is, energy in is equal to energy out. And by postponing what you want to do now, by reducing what you want to do now, just is an expense later on down the road. And with the situation in our economy and our national economy right now, will that be a prudent thing to cut now and hope for the better later and increase taxes later on down the road? I don't know. I don't think anybody here knows that answer. So I think that you have to take the hard road here and realistically look at raising taxes. And as so I also like to say, I think the strength of a town is in its people. And the will of the people will decide what this town, where this town goes in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. You have, what you get is what you spend. I mean, you get what you pay for. And I think we have to consider that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Could you summarize again? You used the word postpone. What do you think the consequence of postponement is?
Postponing some of the things you want to do now. Oh, postponing some of the things that you want to invest in now, some of the programs, some of the grants that you wanted to apply for. By postponing those now, will we be able to pay for it down the road? Will the items cost more down the road? Will there be less money down the road? And down the road could be a year from now.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. Okay. Christine, is there any information? Hold on. Oh, sure, of course. Dan Showalter. Thanks.
Can you hear me, folks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have to go about the whole address and all that fun stuff, or is this informal?
Informal.
Alrighty. In some ways, I want to echo Jim's topic that he brought up. Right now, council consists of 5 of the 7 members that fiscally got us into this hole. Because of mismanagement, I am not in any way pointing the finger towards Joey Warren. In fact, I'm not really pointing the finger towards anybody, including my wife. But there are 5 of the 7 members of council right now that sat on council and passed budgets that were grossly out of proportion to what we were bringing in. How can I trust this council to be responsible with my money and future families' monies? Because you have shown 0 track record in being able to do it. So you best get very creative when it comes to this monies, and maybe we raise it a quarter, maybe we raise it a half. But no, this is unacceptable that you would lay this at the feet of the taxpayer. Sorry, folks, that's my own personal opinion.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't see anybody else on Zoom right now. Hi, Chris. Chris McBride, did you want to say something? Yes, Chris McBride.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I really want to thank you, and I'm so happy to actually see the budget because we can do something. It's better to know the ugly truths and work on them than pretend like it's not happening. And I'm so thankful to see this transparency. I'm so grateful for that.
I was unpopular before. I was popular with.
Well, I feel like you can really see the budget. It's broken down and we can understand it collectively now, it's very well done. My concerns remain that despite a global pandemic, Verona's growing, right? And so we have new businesses moving in, we have people buying property and investing into our main avenue. We have new families bringing children that we need for the school district. And a lot of the new families that came in and bought here are very active in Verona. They're volunteering their time and energy. So after a year like we've had, where a lot of families have become caregivers or have left the workforce or are re-entering the workforce on temporary contracts because they've changed their jobs, I'm really worried about raising the taxes for those families. I understand it's an eventual evil. We all understand that eventually this will have to happen. But if we can figure out our budget, we could raise our parking tickets to $10 a ticket instead of $5. Obviously, we need a slush fund. My grandma called it mad money, but we're gonna need that. And I think you have a lot of ideas to make more money for our community. My other concern is that with taxes, with raising taxes, who decides the value of these homes? Who's deciding how much more we should pay? And, you know, use an example, my brother had a tax assessment done. He went from paying $240 a month in taxes to $800 in taxes. So I think we need to understand what we're getting ourselves in, take a leap like that. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I don't see anything now. No, we don't.
Okay, before we do the second round, I'm just gonna jump in there and let, yeah, any informational. Before we jump in and do the second round, what I want to pause here quickly is because you had expressed an interest in providing some clarity, some clarifying information, Christine. So I wanted to give a pause to do that. So pass the mic back down.
I'll just get some hand sanitizer. It is. I'm not actually sick, just, yeah, anyway. I just wanted to provide a little bit of clarifying information. Vincent, you had asked about, and Trish, I think you had also asked, like, basically why are projected revenues for next year so much lower for certain categories than others? And I can't speak to what happened in the past because I've been here for not even 3 months. But I looked in the general ledger and I said, okay, this is what we've brought in this year. So those are real numbers, and the projected revenues for next year are based on this year. I don't want to go off of what has, for some of these things, what has happened historically, because I don't have like a QuickBooks file that I can go into and really dig. And I would rather underestimate revenues than say we're going to get $28,000, $25,000, and then we think we're good, and then it's only 5 or it's only 3. To me, that's pretty dangerous, because that can just lead us right down this path and we're back in the hole again next year. So I'm not saying there's not potential to raise revenues through, you know, and I'm not proposing this, I'm just saying some of the things that have been said already, you know, raising the parking ticket fees from $5 to $10, or, you know, maybe getting the police department to ramp up efforts on, you know, generally parking tickets or whatever it is. But I also don't have the authority to commit the department to doing that, to say, you better get out there and ticket because we need to raise the revenues like we did last year. Like, that's just, I don't want to, I'm not setting that policy. I'm purely providing information in this budget based on what we're seeing right now. And the other thing that was mentioned, when you look at some of these categories,
the budgets in the past are hugely different from what you see now. So for example, if you look at the public works budget, it looks like the public works budget was slashed, and it wasn't. What we did is we moved capital projects like paving out of public works and called it capital improvements because that's what it is. Same with park improvements. You know, in the past, all the improvements to Cribbs Field would have been called public works, you know, major expenditures. But that's not really a public works major expenditure. That's a park improvement, that's a capital project. And so using historical data, while there's like, it's sometimes useful in this budgeting process, this year, it's not as useful as it will be in future years because of the way specific expenditures, like, I mean, an actual invoice was coded. So I just want to be clear about that. It's not like, you know, there's secret money that is hiding in somebody's drawer. It's those numbers are based on what has actually been received in fines, forfeitures, whatever the case may be for this year.
Can I just add a couple things right here? Yes, yes.
Okay.
What I realized in doing this for the last 4 years is that in our previous budgets, a lot of information was hidden in categories called major and minor expenditures. And I do think that some of those have been teased out by Christine and Susan and Dave and the committee and everything. So that's good. And I also just wanted to mention, Jim, to your point about we have to fix how we got here or we'll be back here. I think we've done a major overhaul to fix how we got here. And there's people who were doing that work who are no longer doing it. And we have new people who are doing it, who are doing, I think, an excellent job. And I don't see us going back to where we were. Yeah.
Just one piece to clarify, and I do want to address, this was brought up about, you know, what finds us here. From 2016 until 2020, out of the 131 boroughs around us, only 11 have decreased millage, and we were one of those. So not only have we not taken the step to increase incrementally, we have decreased it. So 120 other municipalities have addressed this year after year. So as we find ourselves here, we have kicked the can. And if this does, you know, let's talk about this maybe in 2 years, or let's earn trust, or talk about this in 3 years. That has happened for so long. This is where we are. So as we find ourselves here, I just wanted to give that clarity with some data that shows what communities around us have done and what we have and have not done here.
So I'm hearing you say you looked up tax rates in those districts.
Yes, on the county website, it's clear information. You can see that 5-year trend for who has increased over the last 5 years or decreased or stayed the same.
I just wanted to also, if I may, since I was involved early on when the emergency was revealing itself, on the question of reasons for the situation, have they been addressed? And also, how can you trust this council? The council does not, good accounting systems don't rely on trust. They rely on systems. They rely on fund segregation. They rely on professional standards. They rely on segregation of duties. And you have imposed all of those. You worked very hard this year to do that. So it's not, no one should have to trust the individuals necessarily. That is a weak system. That's not a system. You have a very professional accounting firm now in the form of bookminders, and you have your fund segregations, and you have nipped it in the bud, the 200,000, 200,000, 200,000 that led to your deficit position. It is hard figuring out how you go here to get it all restored in a way, but the good news is it's money you owe yourselves. It's a problem you can solve yourself. You're not indebted to outsiders. There's a lot of bright spots here for you all to work on. It's not pleasant, but you are taking incremental steps, and I want to encourage you as borough officials and also the public that from a professional standards point of view, you're heading in the direction you want to go. So I hope that's, I don't know, that was Professor Hockenberry, I guess, coming out there for a second or something, but I hope that that's helpful information. So what, Christine, can you go back to the slide? that showed the agenda? Do you want to address anything else on here? Christine?
No, I was just sort of taking some notes so that the people at home can know what is on the wall.
Yes, thank you. I mean, they can't read my beautiful handwriting. And that's the other thing I would say is, look, you're gonna have lots of information requests between now, tonight, and next week. Christine, that's your homework. Okay, so there may be some homework for you between now and next week. So even if you don't have all the answers tonight, you're not like voting tonight, so take good notes and make sure you get your questions answered at the next meeting. Joey.
One more piece of clarification, so everyone does know. I don't know who's joining for the first time or if this is being memorialized. We do not get paid, so we are volunteers as council members and mayors. So I just want to make that clear that when we take a look at this, there are even, some things we're looking at. We are purely volunteering for this, and I don't know that that is necessarily true in all communities, but I want that to be known so people do realize, like, we are dedicating a lot of time and effort to this, and there's no money behind it. We are also taxpayers as well.
Okay, so the process works in such a way that we've sort of, got everybody's first, and good for you guys. That takes a lot of rapport and trust to sort of just get that first round out, and special tip of the hat to Trish for going first. Very brave. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to go around, but this time we won't go in any order. Just to hear from anybody who maybe your views have changed, or this is your freshest thinking after you've been engaging with your peers and hearing from the public, what your freshest thinking is on the challenge that you face right now.
In regards to the one comment, this has been going on for a while. It's not just the last 5 years in this council. As we spoke at the very beginning of this has been going on for 12, 13 years, and it was unfounded at the time, the way it was all handled. And in regards to one of the other comments, it was stated at the beginning, the Borough of Verona does not set your assessment value of your house. That comes from Allegheny County Board of Assessments. So just so that's clear to people, we only set the millage and do the budget. The county sets the assessments. So just a clarification, yes.
Have your views changed at all since?
No, not really. We're gonna have to go line item, like Sylvia said, every line item is important. Like Dave said, the cops, I mean, he's been trying to get a cop. We can't get anybody to apply. There's every line item's tough, and we're just gonna have to work at it and use our erasers a lot, I guess.
Thanks, Rick. Freshest thinking. I love the word freshest. I saw that hand. I don't know if you're ready to say something or not, but I thought that hand was coming up for me.
This was touched on a little bit in the comments and kind of got me thinking about something else that I've been thinking about, and I think we talked about, even with the committee last night, but the whole idea of kicking the can down the road. This budget that's been put together doesn't even have paving. We did some paving this past year. We've generally tried to do, in my experience, some paving each year. This budget for 2022 doesn't have any paving in it. Okay, Christine's saying that do you want to address that?
It does actually have some paving, but honestly, I think we should take it out for reasons we can get into later. It's out of liquid fuels, which I don't think it should be funded with liquid fuels. Like it's in there, but I think that could hurt us with the general fund going forward because of how we can use liquid fuels to purchase things that would otherwise be paid for out of the general fund. But I did put it there just as like a discussion point.
But there's none in the general. There's none in the general fund.
Thank you.
That's really what you're trying to balance right now.
Yeah, so and I guess so even if we have a little bit of paving in there under liquid fuels or somewhere, if it's in liquid fuels, it's not gonna cutting that isn't really gonna help our situation with the general fund. And so yeah, not at all. It's not at all gonna help us. So But what I'm looking at in what we've been trying to do, and it's kind of taking a back seat to the budget discussion, is developing a capital plan, a 5-year capital plan, so that we have a list of priorities. And Christine presented some of the capital projects that are currently in the budget for 2022. She's shown a list of things that are not in there, and I'd like to, maybe look at the ones that are not in there, if you could. Thanks. And there's a lot of needs. There's a lot of competing priorities. It's not an easy task to decide what capital projects we need to do. But if we, cut every capital project we possibly can this year to save, money and avoid tax or millage increases, we're going to be back in the same situation next year and probably the year after, probably for some time to come. And the longer, especially with paving, the longer we put off some of these things, the more expensive they get, which I think is something someone mentioned, and the more roads need to be paved. I know there's already a lot of roads out there. We tried to get grants that we didn't get this past year. We're trying to develop a paving program. So we're identifying the highest needs, the highest volume, ranking them. It's taking a lot of work to do that. But if we're not able to fund paving, and I'm just using that as an example, this year, there's a good chance we won't be able to do it next year unless we make some serious changes. And again, like I said, it's pretty lean already. We're gonna have a limit on how much we can actually cut without seriously disrupting services to the constituents. So, we should cut where we can, but do people want to cut a lot of the things we take for granted and enjoy or need as a community in order to balance the budget? So that's just thoughts I had just from the comments that had come up.
I also want to share that through this process, it is also eye-opening to realize that as much as we give accolades for the grants that we receive, that, those are coupons, but you also have to buy the item. So a $25 off coupon's great, but would it cost $400? You're still having to spend money. So there are some things that, as we went through this process, it was eye-opening to see, oh, we got a grant for that. We got a grant for this. But then realizing that for some of these things, they are zero cost to us, but some of them, there are costs to that. I think just realizing that some of these projects, though applied for and sometimes we're granted them, we have to be in a position to put those dollars up to spend for some of these projects. So, which is more of a reason I think it's important that we take a look at having money that we do stow away for some of these years. If you go back a slide where it's whatever, 33,000 or 14,000 or where those matching dollars can be put to use. But that was eye-opening just to see that though we celebrate a project going on, it's a great amenity or something as an improvement to the whole community. There is a cost to that. It's not just all free grant money.
Something real quick. I'm gonna look into the parking ticket and fines and forfeits. Those two numbers look like last year's numbers personally, because we were very lenient last year because of the COVID. Actually, every business was shut down in town for at least 6 months or so. But those numbers don't look right.
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate everyone's comments so far. It's really helpful. I was thinking a bit about what Rhoda said is, you want to cut your corners, but not to the point where you're, perhaps endangering, public safety or, to Dave Matlin's point about if you don't pave the roads this year, you're still going to have to pave them next year plus some more. So definitely some tough decisions. I had a couple more questions I thought of just as we were all talking for possible clarification. The first is, I know that we got the grant for Riverbank and we didn't get the full amount. So our match is actually 8,000 and not 20,000. I wasn't sure if we had the 20,000 still in here somewhere or 8,000 or neither, since we're probably going to do it in 2023. And my second question is, I see we still did have, hang on, line item 454-1 112, which is for a full-time wage for parks and playground support. I don't know if we have clarification on, okay, coming to you.
454112 wages full-time under parks and playgrounds. So whenever our public works team logs their time, they specify whether they are, doing like general street things versus parks activities versus things that can be charged to the sewer fund. So the public works wages are actually spread over 2 line items within the general fund, like under the Public Works 430 code, and then also under parks and playgrounds, which is line 454, and then dash all the stuff, as well as in the sewer fund. So if you look in the sewer fund, you'll also see some public works wages. So that's just to clarify that it's not hiring somebody. It's just really delineating where we use our current employees' time. So things like that, things that would be in the parks. Or if there's some, minor repair that needs made and they have to do that, all those things get charged to parks. And then you had another question too, but I don't remember what it was now.
Yeah, the recent Riverbank Park upgrade grant, our match is only 8,720. Is 20 still in there somewhere, or was it changed to 8 or neither because it's in 2023?
It has not been bumped to 2023. My suggestion would be we do bump it to 2023. Right now, this budget still reflects the full $27,230 that we had expected to have in the match. I didn't want to change it again yesterday once I got the letter, and it's a little too close to today. So it is less. You're right. It's about $20,000 less. And my recommendation would be to kick it to 2023 so that we can alleviate that pressure. Even if it's just $8,000, that's still $8,000, and it's a way to close the gap a bit.
Christine, that's a good
Jiggle that.
That's a good first item for your tape.
Yes, I need to stop having this on the screen. So I'm gonna get rid of the presentation, which means we can't reference it if I'm going back to the other one. Anybody want this?
And while you're doing, yeah, let's pass that around. So.
Oh.
No, so good. No, go ahead.
Thank you. I think every one of these comments have been excellent. I've listened to all of them. And to me, what keeps rolling in my mind is the word priority. That word is really big to me right now. And when I think priority, I think of what is the most important thing to the people of this community. And I think of Dave with the police. I think of Ray with the fire department. Number one priority, it's top safety to our people. Whether we like it or not, we're in very difficult times now. We're actually going by day. Our world is completely upside down. We don't really know what awaits us right now. So I think we need to be beyond prudent with what we do. And without a question, we have to prioritize. As the comment was made, nothing's coming down in price. Everything continues to rise. And yes, if we get an emergency, where do we turn? Where do we get the money? So I think anything that's an extra, get the eraser and take it off. I don't see any other way out. If there is a way, please tell me. I've listened and I've looked at the numbers. And I think top priority is going to be really important things. Ray's department, Dave's department, and from there down. Those are safety, and our residents are important. Everybody's important, but that's something that we just really need to prioritize what we're doing here.
Thanks, Sophie. You're absolutely right. This is an
Thank you.
exercise. This is an exercise in prioritization.
I have a lot of line item questions that I'm waiting till we run the tape for. But I also wanted to ask about, and then Kim Roller wants to go next. Okay, all right. The sewer, Christine brought up in her presentation about Alcoasand raising is 7%. And there's a longer explanation that goes with that in terms of how much extra there is, and that goes into the sewer fund, and there'd still be extra if we don't raise that. And we'd still be putting money into the sewer fund, as I understand this. That's for our number of gallons used, correct? That what you presented tonight?
There are two pieces. There's the two pieces to the sewer fees are based on the per gallon, well, it's the per 1,000 gallons used. And then there's also the flat fee. So the sewer fund fee is the two sources of revenue come from flat fee plus usage.
And I want to encourage you guys to focus on the general fund tonight. That's the hard work you need
No.
to do. It's going to take a couple of meetings and maybe cover the other two funds that
Yeah.
have surplus next meeting.
But this isn't about the budget. This is about the bills that are coming into each individual resident. So if they are, if there'd be more of a bill for the taxes, there's going to be less of a bill coming for the sewer. And it's not going to zero out. But I thought when you presented that you were talking about the gallons and not the set fee. And if there's going to be a, not a raise in the set fee, how much that might possibly equate to, or was what you presented for both?
That's everything.
Okay.
Can you just compare the two averages, Christine, from the 50 and the 35?
Sure. So the two numbers that we're comparing is if we do not raise the sewer fees, the 7% to account for Alcoasand's increased charges, that's going to save a typical homeowner, what did I say, $35.60 or something like that. A 1 mil increase on the middle home, the middle value home, is $50.40. So if you are the middle home in value and you are a typical water user, then you're not going to see a reduction, like you're not getting a rebate or something on sewer fees. You're just not getting an increase. And so it amounts to basically $15 a year difference.
So $1.25 a month is what you see as an increase.
Doesn't break it out that way, but yes. We might do average it at that level.
And keeping in mind that,
Also, though, I mean, to be fair, one of our residents tonight had said, what if we doubled our tickets from 5 to 10?
Well, these are real world scenarios where do you want to get a ticket from your windshield wiper that's from 5 to 10 now when you go to get groceries, or all these things are real. But if it's 1 mil is $50 a year for the median home, and the average savings is $35, that's literally $1.25 a month then that a household is paying in those two scenarios with those two sets of numbers, which I think is it's a way to look at it. It's all coming from the same person, the same checkbook from the same household. And if we could, in doing all this math, it appears we've done a lot more due diligence this time, realize that, I think that helps with where we find whatever stages is the third stage, like the fresh look. That's something that is new to me in understanding that we've all stated we don't want to raise millage, but when you take a look at the bigger picture and you step back, there are savings in some spots and then there's, added in others. But when it comes down to it, $1.25 a month is something that I think is it's a bite-sized thing that a household can absorb.
So I want to be mindful of the clock.
Right.
It's 8:35 almost.
Yeah.
And we haven't started the tape. So
yeah, but just one little,
let's wrap up our precious thinking.
one other little point about that is, other than maybe this year of 2021, that rate for Alcoasand, if some of you have been on council for a while, every beginning of the year or end of the year, if you remember, there was a motion and it was passed to raise the rates. I distinctly remember Jerry bringing it up every year. And we've been raising them. And so we're proposing not to do that this year because in terms of the income to the sewer fund, which we're not doing tonight, I realize, but just in general, we can handle that. So there'll be a cost savings.
I think what you're saying there is there's capacity within the sewer fund to absorb the increase due to prior revenue enhancements. I'm hearing you. So.
I would never choose those.
Okay,
words,
sorry.
but Susan.
I mean, the rates were raised higher in the past and there's capacity there. That's all I was
Yeah,
trying to say.
and what we're not gonna do, it's gonna save each household, and what Joey said is $1.25 a month.
I see your hand, but our process is we're gonna get through this tape and then we're gonna call on you if that's okay.
Okay, so Kim
All right.
had her hand up, but it's the same thing for Kim too, right? We're gonna wait.
We're gonna get through
Wait
the
back.
tape with council.
Yeah.
And some of it's heavy lifting here now.
Yeah, okay.
And then we'll hear some more from the folks in the public. So let me just, I hope everyone can see that. It's a little small here in the council chambers, but Christine put up there the general fund. We can see that 371.60, that's it, Christine. Want to move your cursor right there to that deficit position from fund balance estimate. That's the number you're trying to get to zero or something. And then the yellow area is where you can make adjustments, and then scroll down a little bit, Christine. There, she's got the revised total, your running total. Council will remember this from the cutting exercise we did in April. So revenue obviously makes that number, that deficit go down. Increases in expenditures make it go up. So it's going to be a net of your priorities, as Sylvia wisely said.
So how are we gonna run this tape?
So one of you is going to take the bold leap to suggest the first adjustment.
Okay, and my suggestions are coming in by way of questions on some things that seem very different to me.
I just want to point out that despite that I couldn't get Excel to print page numbers for some weird reason, I did handwrite page numbers on here. So if we're referring to specific lines, it might be easiest to just say page 7, so that we can find it easier.
So page 1, 321-400 licensing fees. I'm just curious. Oh. Never mind, forget that question. I jumped lines. Okay, I had the same question as Vince about the parking tickets, and I know you guys are looking into that. And so we're doing revenues, correct?
You can do anything. A proposed
Oh.
increase in revenue then for parking might be an additional 15,000 in revenue. Is that what the proposal is? Let's try to get some concrete proposals, even though you're not voting, there's no decision being made here. Let's just get going.
It is just confusing on 331-170. That big difference between 28,000 last year, 25,000 the year before, and 2,300 for 2021.
Somebody want to propose an adjustment?
Well, that one, I don't know whether we should propose an adjustment because I thought there was some background or some research that needed to go
There still
into that.
does. You're not voting tonight. This is getting you going in the right direction.
I'd like to make.
Let me see what page this is. This is 401, 460. This is essentially the cost of us going to Seven Springs as a full council for $9,000 for educational furthering. This is a portion of the budget. That's about $9,000. I think that where we stand right now, I think that we could afford to not spend that money for us to go to Seven Springs to attend that. But if there are one-offs where we still have money in that line to spend for furthering education or networking with communities, we look at that. But I would think that that $9,000 could be stricken to take away from something that we usually invest in for us.
What number is that again, Joey?
It is,
What page do you want?
Maybe 5.
thank you.
Page 5, 40,
Thank you.
meetings and content.
Yeah, so at our estimates, through some homework, that's about $9,000 of the $12,000. Now, Mayor, I know you went to a conference with mayors for about $250. I think it's important. Things like that, I think should remain. We should see things like that as networking as we should, but the 9,000 from Seven Springs is what I'd like to offer.
And again, you guys are all just getting your ideas out on the table. You're gonna, it's not a voting meeting, so.
I just would like to add to that, that I think the way it's written, it says cancel Seven Springs ALOM conference. I would like to point out that that would be, the borough does not pay for the council members and mayor to attend. Any of us can still choose to attend at our own cost. So we're not saying none of us can go or that we can't go. We're just saying that the borough is, the taxpayers are not footing the bill for that.
Okay, we have local government academy coming up. I don't know if that bill's been paid yet, Christine. If not, should we maybe just cut it this year?
The local government academy class for newly elected officials is actually going to be paid out of 2021. 5 of people either around this table or in the audience are signed up to go. And 4 of the 5 have already been, the check went in the mail today. The other thing is I really, really think that that's a critical training for newly elected officials to attend. And cutting that, I think, is really going to harm the borough long-term, particularly, as we have new people coming on and we're really trying to level up Verona. And I think part of that comes with, being, I don't know how to say it nicely, but being really trained and educated in best practices and what's really working in communities. And that means attending things like the newly elected officials class. So I would strongly advocate for the borough paying for that conference or those workshops.
Thank you. I just not right now.
And what was the cost for the LGA?
So because we are a small community, we get a discount. And so it's $225 per person instead of, and actually that's even, there are 2 discounts. There's a discount just based on size of the community, and it's typically $400 for a community of our size. But LGA has generously extended a discount to the borough for a variety of reasons. And so instead of $400, it's $225.
Yeah, thanks. I'd just like to add that that's significantly less than Seven Springs conference, which is about $1,000 a person for the weekend, including hotel and everything.
So a couple questions on page 2, line item 350-013. This grant section was always confusing to me from before. And I guess I don't understand state grants popping up, from, 2019, it's 150,000. Then now this year, 212. Can you?
So again, I cannot speak to history in 2018, 2019, 2020. But what I can say, the way that 2021 and 2022 are written in the budget. So grants can either run through the borough or not run through the borough. So for example, the community development block grant funding that we get for certain projects, that's run through the COG. So if the total project cost is $100,000, but the grant is paying for $80,000 and we owe 20, the way that works is we pay our local match to the COG and then they handle it. So we do not see any money show up as a revenue because we don't get anything for that. Our $20,000 just shows up as an expenditure under the capital improvement section. That's community development block grant. But the CFA grants, like the one that's, going on right now with Cribs, that one does run through the borough. So what happens there, Matt fills out a voucher, CFA cuts us a huge check, for like $250,000. We deposit the $250,000 in the bank. And then, a week later, we write a check that's equal to the $250,000 we got from CFA plus our local match. And so in those instances, like CFA money shows up in line 350-013 because we took in that money as a revenue. And then it shows up as an expenditure at the bottom of the budget because all that money went out and then some. So I can't speak to what happened prior to 2021, but what I can say is those numbers can vary wildly from year to year, depending on how many grants we got and which funding sources, because some funding sources flows through the borough and others do not.
That's very helpful. So probably in this case, if we take the time to look it up on the expenditures line, we'd find where we've sent that money out. Okay. Thank you, Christine. That's a great clarification. Under, on the same page too, at the bottom, sewer rental revenue. Someone else brought this up already. 600 some odd $1,000 and now zero. I don't understand.
Again, I don't have QuickBooks access to files prior to this year. But what I think that is just a different classification of the Alcosan fees. I think, because it's huge, it's a huge number. We're talking almost $700,000. So I think that one is Alcosan.
Was probably somewhere else.
Yeah, and actually that one is still on the revenue side. So that one's probably what Oakmont Water pays us on a regular basis for collecting the sewer fees effectively. So that's the way it works. Like individual homeowners get their water and sewer bill, they pay it, and then some portion of that Oakmont Water collects on our behalf, cuts a check to the borough, we cash the check, and then a week later we turn around and give almost all of it to Alcosan.
So where is that located now? Where is this particular money going in and out?
It's under.
So that's now under a thing called sewer fees, which is on page 3, 369-000 is the broad category, but sewer fees specifically are 369-400. And so that's the 860,000.
I have a question on page 3, line item 380-100, parking lot revenue. Is that for the leasing of the parking lots? Well, that's what I mean, yeah.
I believe these ones are the permits that individuals take out on a regular basis to be able to park more than 2 hours in the municipal lots.
I guess the question I'm asking is, we've never went into that fund. There should be a lot more than that in there.
You mean fund day? It's not a fund.
Well, I know, okay, in the line item then.
You mean it should be more revenue should come from that?
Yeah, because we got that, the parking lot revenue was solely for upgrades of the parking lots, both parking lots. We needed to repave them, seal them, reline them, and we haven't done that in years.
Okay.
Definition of resources
yeah.
at one point, but it's not a take in, take out line. You're saying it in past years.
It
that's-
keeps
that's
building
not-
up.
Yeah, but this is a budget. This particular thing's not going to show what you're talking about, which is the buildup of the funds for repaving the lots. This is
It
just.
doesn't occur unless you have a special
yeah.
revenue fund.
Yeah.
And you only have 2 special revenue funds, sewer and liquid fuels. You don't have a special earmark for those funds. The only way that occurs is with the creation of a special revenue fund, which you could do in the future, but you do not have earmarked receipts from prior years for future capital in that area currently.
in your reporting.
This is just a budget. It's just showing past history of how much we took in. It's not showing what you're thinking, like where it might gather somewhere and have a bunch of money for repaving.
That's what Susan's saying, is it doesn't gather, because there was never the creation of a parking lot fund.
Just went in the general fund.
But
Yeah,
there
it just-
was, once upon a
There was,
time.
there
Well,
was.
there
Not in the
wasn't,
last
if
3
there's-
years in your financial statements, which is what is governing on this.
It might have been discussed and it might have said we should do this, but there was never.
I'm not arguing with anybody, but there was, when Bonnie Conway was here, we had a special line item for that, where the money was gathered, because we had probably about $30,000 built up into that at one point. And I'm talking 10, 12 years ago. Rhoda, I don't know if you were on, do you remember the parking lot fund having its own account that the money went into?
That got tricky. I think it was earmarked. Yeah, basically it was earmarked, but when Bonnie was handling the finances, we had a lot of, my goodness, there was an ambulance fund. So I'm not sure how accurate anything really was, but there was a parking lot fund. You're correct. You're correct.
Can I have I'm gonna call prerogative as your facilitator and a point of order. Yep. I think what you're trying to do is validate how good are the estimates for next year, right? And I think Christine has been really forthcoming and that she's doing the best she can with the limited information that she has. I want to suggest that the question would be, Christine, how did you come up with that estimate? And then if that seems like it's maybe not as accurate as it could be based on everyone's greater historical knowledge, that we tweak it. But sort of trying to reconcile what is in 2022 to what's there for just reference only, right? If you want to know what your revenue and expenses were for the prior years that are on this, you really have to look at your financial statements, your DCED reports. Other than that, if what our job here to do tonight is to get you a balanced budget, I want to suggest that you validate the information with just how'd you do that kind of questions as opposed to comparison questions. Is that helpful? Thanks.
So I'm going to try that. Let's talk about code enforcement. Christine, how did you come about? This is line number 413-310. I'm looking at a different size, so I'm not really sure. I have a different.
Page 8.
Okay, so page 8. So again, that's 413-310. Janet mentioned this earlier, and I know we've had a few conversations in the ordinance committee meeting about how do we want to do code enforcement? So Christine, if you could tell us more about how you got to that 29,000.
So this 29,000, let me find it, $29,250 for line 413-310 code enforcement was determined by sort of a mishmash of our current contract and what BIU is proposing, like as we've discussed, there's some issues with there, but let's just say we do approve their new proposed contract. That means we would be paying BIU for 4 hours of code enforcement at $65 an hour each week. And then I'm looking at, the volume of tip sheets that are coming in. And I just said, well, what if we dramatically cut down on the number of tip sheets coming in? We just put a cap on the number any one person can submit in a week. And we say there are 5 tip sheets. Those 5 tip sheets are billed out at $65 each. So if Mike comes here and works for 4 hours a week doing code enforcement, like watchdogging kind of stuff, and 5 tip sheets per week, 50 weeks per year, that amounts to just under $30,000. And I would suggest that that's very expensive. I don't know that we have another good option at this time. I'm looking into a couple of things. But that's how I got the $29,250. It's based on very, very, very modest, dare I say, bare bones code enforcement.
So you're saying each tip sheet is $65 a tip sheet?
Yes, each tip sheet is $65 per, if we accept the new contract. Now, if we don't accept the new contract, then we're not under contract, and then I think we're shopping again. So, but that's a broader discussion that, we can kick to next time. But that's how I got that number.
Yeah, I don't know if we have time tonight to talk about other options, but I know Janet, you suggested, and Mayor, of course, you've suggested, can we do some of that internally, utilizing our police force in recently, we were discussing with Craig that actually in some municipalities, the mayor has the authority to do some code enforcement. So I don't know if that's something we want to explore down the road. I also wanted to talk about line item, page 1, 321-500. I know that this year we did see a decrease in the regulated rental licensing from, for anyone who's not looking, 38,000 to, 20,000 to 38,000 for 2020. So I think that projection for 2022 is reasonable. I just didn't know if there was anything we could propose tonight to try to increase it to where it had been in the past.
This is my off the cuff response to, great idea, Trish. I'd like to see that go back up to 38. And I will tell you that is a very complicated ongoing process that Marcia took care of. And it was her biggest thing, I think, that she took care of. And I think we could increase it. It would take a lot of work and we'd have to hire somebody
How
to
much is
do
the
it.
increase?
Huh?
How much would the increase be?
18,000 from 20,000 to, if we got back to 2020 levels, it'd be $18,000.
Do you want to put it on the list? And that's something that can be researched between this week and next week.
I can add it to the list and it can be something that's researched.
That's my suggestion, just because we're a long way from 300,000 folks. I'm gonna keep the momentum going if I may.
Yeah, and the only thing though I would say is that you're gonna have to have someone come in here and do that. So you increase it by 18,000, but then somewhere in our expenditures, we need to hire somebody
To do the work.
to do the work because it's a time consuming for several months work.
Are you're done? Okay. So I'm just wondering if we want to just cut to the chase here and go through the list that the finance committee came up with as recommendations to consider. The first thing, we made a motion at a past meeting to sell the Peterbilt truck. So what we had talked about last night was, I think, and maybe the estimates still, the numbers need to be maybe researched a little bit. Or 40 to 50,000 is the estimate of what we think we might get for it on municipal bid. So I'm suggesting that we put that in as a maybe a potential one-time revenue source. The flip side of that is we also did want to consider some sort of DPW capital purchase, to if we're getting rid of something that we're not needing, could there be opportunity to get DPW something that they do need? So I don't know if we came to a solid decision on what that would be, but we were estimating $40,000 for that. So
this is all pending the sale. So we'd have this is from our last discussion. This would be something that we'd set a minimum sale price of, hope that the market where we find ourselves sells for a very decent amount of money, and then take a look at what that purchase would look like with the money raised. But as we're doing this, we don't want to have 1,000 cuts and bleed through all of this. So, it's a part discussion.
Noted.
The 40,000 though on the line for sale.
Noted, and it's a net change of 0, so.
yeah, currently it's a net change of 0. That's certainly up for further discussion, evaluation. Looking at expenditures, item 401301, which is under page 4. And that is consulting fees. I do know that, so that's currently proposed for the 2022 budget of 15,000. What our recommendation would be, there is some slack in that number, as we understand from Christine. So we were proposing to eliminate $3,000 in slack for that number. And Christine can probably explain more about where that number came from.
I'll explain it next time.
Okay. So the next one, we talked about Seven Springs. No, we already talked about it. Or Seven Springs was 401,460. I'm going to skip a couple items that we don't have numbers for. Another item was we had $1,200, or sorry, going to line 430-180. Page 8, 430-180, that is Public Works overtime pay. And a portion of that, that number came from just the fact that there's emergencies, there's snow events. They do have to work overtime. $1,200 in that was put in for 2022 for watering of the baskets. And I know that's a small amount in a direct cut, but the finance committee is recommending doing it because there's also an additional estimated $5,000 or so in cuts to their regular time, which we're not going to realize any actual direct cost savings there, but it frees them up to do other things that may be more core to their role and their responsibilities. So,
and this is a compounding price of things that we have been looking at neighboring communities. We are extending ourselves beyond what is the best practice in our neighboring communities. And as a line, it looks like a small amount. When you compound the time taken during a normal day before you even get to the overtime, we are extending a lot of things to where other communities have community groups do some of the work that they request. And we do have things that are available to them, but the work itself, the labor, the costs that are compounding one after the other, is where we found this to be a place to cut.
thank you, Joey. Another item, I think it's on the same page 4, or no, it's the next page, 430373. That is repairs and maintenance to the garage. Again, it's under Public Works. There's $4,000 in there, and I believe that's all for replacing some of the man doors, human doors in the building that are in bad shape. These are exterior doors to the garage or the borough building. And our suggestion would be to cut that back. Originally there was 4 doors that were identified for replacement. We're recommending to cut that back to only do 1 door, and that's the mechanical room door that's in the worst shape. So cutting it by $2,000, that line item.
In 1 second, that's $4,000, and if it's 4 doors, we're cutting 3 doors out.
Yeah, so Ray's asking, yeah, how the math shook out on that, and I think Christine can explain.
So the doors are, depending on which door, it's between $1,500 and $2,000 a pop. And there are 4 doors, and we'd like to replace all 4, but there's one of them that it's the worst looking door I've ever seen in my life. Like when I went outside and I looked at it, it is completely, totally, 100% rusted on the outside. And so we're suggesting to do only that door this year because it is in such rough shape and save the other doors for a future year.
I think to Ray's point, if you say $2,000 or even $1,500 for one door and then multiply that times 4, we're getting a higher amount.
We just didn't put them all in.
So, yeah, so there, I think the total cost at estimates that we got, the quotes were $6,000 to $7,000 for all 4. So the 4,000 wouldn't cover all 4, but we're saying reduce it even further to just do the one that's the worst. Does that answer your question, Ray?
Yeah.
Okay. There's that. There's 3 other things that we talked about, or 4 other things actually. We looked at the addition of a full-time police officer. And the way we looked at this, I don't think any of us disagreed with previous assertions tonight that police, fire, public safety is very important and is a priority. The way we're looking at it is this is an addition for this year. I know the mayor's been asking for it for some time. Are we staffed sufficiently currently? Do we want to make it a priority to add that extra staff member? Because that is additional to what the current 2021 previous budgets show. Or do we want to stay the course? So when I say the potential of cutting this, it's not that we're necessarily cutting back on what we're already spending on the police. It's that we're either cutting or delaying expanding the department. And I don't want to, I want to hear from council on whether that's something we want to look at, but I do want to just highlight that, and this is item 410-111, and that's on page 6. And so the additional full-time officer was budgeted at $55,000, I believe. But there's additional costs, FICA, Medicare, healthcare, professional liability, that add up to roughly $75,000 in the budget. So I just wanted to, I want to highlight that because looking at that single line item of 410-111, you're not seeing the complete costs there. And the other line items are FICA, Medicare is on 410-192, which is on the same page. Healthcare is on 410-196, which is on page 7. And professional liability is on 410-352. That's also on page 7.
So Dave, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Is then the cliff notes of that elimination of that new hire would be $75,000?
Correct. If we were to eliminate the new hire, it would cut $75,000 from expenditures. And I think, I don't know, is there anything that I missed, Christine?
The only other thing to note about increasing the size of the police force that doesn't explicitly show up in this is our pension liability. So some of my research that I've done to date indicates that our uniformed pension is only funded at 77%. And so that means that if people start drawing on that, we're on the hook. We need to find a way to make that up. So my concern with adding another full-time person is, are we just compounding that problem of, not just the health insurance, et cetera, but we have this unfunded pension. And it's not to say, and anyway, that's my concern.
I just have a question about all that. As contracts come due, is there a way to renegotiate how that pension is funded? Because currently I think that the police don't put anything in.
So again, being the clock meister that I am, Dave, is your proposal to eliminate the new hire at 75,000 for this list?
I don't want to be the bad guy, and I don't want to. I'm not seeing a lot of other big ticket items to reduce to get us anywhere close to being able to avoid raising taxes. So it really comes down, again, like Sylvia and Susan said, priorities. If it's a priority to us as a group, and I don't want to be the only one to weigh in on this. I mean, I know that the finance committee, we talked about it last night. If we're going to prioritize police, then we're going to have to find other cuts or raise revenue even further.
What I'm gonna suggest to you is you get it on the list for now, you're not voting tonight.
Yeah.
Right? You guys are not voting tonight, you can decide what you can't live with at a future point in time, but you're putting it out there for consideration to make a big dent. is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so what Susan said is we're putting it on the list for consideration. This is not set in stone. This is something for consideration. We're not voting on this tonight. I would welcome feedback from council, mayor, and the public on this item. So it's going to be it's on the list for consideration along with everything else.
Hold on, tell us how we're going after Spain.
If we were to pretend for a moment that all the things on the list were implemented, that would take the general fund balance from negative $370,000 to negative $235,000.
Thank you. Going down the rest of the list. And I want to offer this up for consideration. This is also police related. 410-189. That's near the bottom of page 6. That's formal training. There was, I believe there was, I think we should have put it on the list for further research, but there was $4,000 added for 2021. It hasn't been used. The question we had from the committee is, what prompted it to be added for 2021? It's carried over for 2022 currently. Do we need it? Is it going to be used? If it is going to be used, there is, an identifiable training, then we can consider keeping it in. Again, it's just something that we haven't charged against ever. So
Was under formal training, is that for updating every year? Each officer has to go requalify?
That's what the question is. This is a requirement. Yeah, we wanted.
It is a requirement, yes.
Okay, so through the Commonwealth, you have to update your credentials.
Every year,
Okay.
they have to go to the academy and retest on their firearms that we use.
Which is why we're doing it. So if it's a requirement, that was our question. So it needs to be made.
Yes.
So I'm going to do some additional research on that, because if it is a requirement, there should have been an expenditure presumably, unless it happens between, like in the last quarter of the year, the last couple of months of the year, because as of right now, nothing's been drawn against it for 2021. So it's possible it's just getting bucketed somewhere else. And so I'll do some research to find out, one, has it been done? And two, where is it getting bucketed? Because it's not that line item. And if it's bucketed somewhere else and it should be here, I can move it, but it might mean that we actually have $4,000 to play with, because that recertification, if you will, is just allocated somewhere else. So I'll add it to the research list.
Thank you, Christine. Two other things that are similar to one another. The solicitor and engineer fees, I don't know if anyone remembers from the pie chart, they are significant. Maybe they're not the most significant items of expenditure, but for instance, 404,000, looking at legal fees altogether, we're currently at, and that's on pages 5 and 6. The sum of that category is on 6. and currently it's 62,750. So it's up, or it's projected to go up next year from the 46,892 that we're projecting to end with in 2021. It's gone up since 2018. The question was raised whether we could reduce that and be more efficient with how we use our solicitor. So I don't know whether to add this or the engineer one, because I don't know that we came up with a number.
And that actually has increased since 2017, if we were to look back. The question I think with this one is that the solicitor who's very closely working with Borough would understand, if we don't need him at every meeting we have every month at multiple meetings, then he doesn't need to be required. He's not a member of council, it's for guidance. So if the solicitor can take a look at what the cost has started from and gone to in the last 4 or 5 years, it's nearly doubled. So if we could work with him, that he knows we're trying to run an austere budget, and he can see, you know, what meetings does he attend? Where does he spend his time? It might be a savings. So I think it's worth an audit in the conversations we've had.
Every phone call made to the solicitor is added into that too. So if we're making phone calls that really don't need full attention, you know, or, you know, that's gonna be added up, you know,
Yeah.
if it's just a little minor thing that can wait maybe till a meeting or something that can be asked, or, you know, if it's major. But just, you know, when you make that phone call, anytime you call a lawyer, you know, that gets added to the fee.
Yeah, and that is their business. And, you know, I think as a best practice, as a council, as we move forward, it shouldn't be a crutch that we always have our solicitor at our side. But when needed, we should come with good questions, ask for guidance and ask for instructions. So we're within the bounds we need to be. But I think it's one thing that working with their office, they could help us look at and see if, you know, what did times look like in 2017, 18, that there might be a way we can look at this differently.
Can I ask you guys to put a number around those potential savings for the list?
I just want to suggest that we put a savings of $4,000 to $5,000 around that. And part of my reasoning is, you know, the solicitor and the engineering budgets, like I will admit, I boosted those a little bit for 2022 compared to 2021, because it feels like we're really asking Matt and Craig to do a lot more now than even, you know, when I started. And so, you know, I just said, okay, this trend's going to continue. And, you know, I'd rather us have the money in the budget and make it to the end of the year than get to, you know, September. It's like, oh, can't afford you anymore, Matt. See you in 2023. So I can remove a little bit of that. And then I think in conjunction with some of the other suggestions of, you know, be prepared when we have to talk to Craig and Matt, have our questions really thought out. Don't call them for every little thing. Maybe group the questions, et cetera, et cetera. You know, we can take $4,000 or $5,000 out.
So that's for solicitor specifically? Okay.
So is it 4 or is it 5?
Like Christine said, we talked last night about it. And everybody calls them and everybody has a great idea. Hey, Matt, can you look into this? Hey, Matt, can you look into that? Well, Matt's gonna look into it because, hey, cha-ching, cha-ching. So if you get them, if we all sit down and go to the committee, then we bring it back to whole council, and then the president or council or whoever, the committee chairman says, hey, I got 3 things for you to look into, Matt. We decide what we, as a group, what we want, or for Craig, you know? So just try to be a little more responsible. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, Ray, that was a great point. That was actually what I was gonna say next. For both solicitor and engineer, being more of a council of one and not 7 individual council members asking them to do a job.
And they do good work. I want to state that they do good work, and it's service we need. And it's just that we're spending our residents' dollars. So I want to acknowledge that.
So how much you guys suggest we take off from there?
That's a question, I think, to hold the line and do the homework between our next meeting.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. And I wonder if, since we've been toying with the structure of our meetings, if there's not a way that we don't even have to keep them both for the entire meeting, maybe we can consolidate towards the beginning. Everyone ask your questions at that point after deciding on the priorities.
I agree, but I also have along them lines, isn't there retainer fee part of the being at the certain meetings? So they are to be at certain meetings. So that's something to look into once a month.
So this again is one of those lines that I'd rather have too much money than not enough so that, we can get our engineering done for the year. I did put in on this, what are you calling it, a tape, Susan, $5,000. And the reason I'm putting in $5,000, if you look at, where'd it go? It's page 6 under engineering, we're projected to spend a little over 53,000 for 2021. I had bumped that to 61,000 because we were, I was expecting us to do a lot more engineering next year. But, in thinking about this, I think we can really pare down the projects that we're asking Matt to do that are more, basically, there might still be big projects like things related to the Alcoasand regionalization, but they're more concentrated projects. So the time that he's spending is, we're not asking him to multitask as much. There'll be some cost savings in him not having to jump from project to project. And again, it's being very thorough and thoughtful and not just emailing him one question, bucket the questions if possible. So I'm going to suggest a $5,000 savings here on the reduce engineer fees.
It may be a policy.
Trish suggested a policy for that. The only other thing we had talked about, and this is actually an addition, is for the part-time police officers who work an average of 32 hours or more. We couldn't find anything in writing, but I think we all agreed that it was decided a couple years ago to, and I'm not sure how many officers this applies to, but to offer a $2,000 bonus at the end of the year for working 32 plus hours on average. Do you agree with that, Mayor?
I called, I told Christine, I called Jerry Kenna this afternoon to check in on how that was written. If it was a contract or if it was a policy or if it was a whatever. And he said it was just a suggestion and council voted to do that. And what it was for any officer, if they average 32 hours a week, they get it at the end of the year. Now, if they would quit in November, they wouldn't get it. They had to work throughout the whole year. And he believes that's how the motion was made, that they would get the 30, if they worked their average of 32 hours a week, they would get the $2,000. Now, if they would get hired in, just say July 1, then that would be retro back to like $1,000 and, and the hours would cut back, but it still had to be 32 hours. And that's what I remembered. Remember I was saying last night, and that's what I remembered. It was never in their contract or there was never a policy written on that.
So what's the adjustment?
So I think there needs to be some adjustment because as I understand it, Christine, there isn't anything in the current budget for those $2,000 bonuses. So I had put last night, I put a ball, just a rough number of 10,000, but that could very easily change. But I think we need more research.
Right now, I believe I only have one officer that works 32 hours. That's the problem. I have one officer that's been here about 16 years. He has a full-time job and he works, I believe, 3 days a week here also. So I don't think it's fair to give somebody just because they're working 32 hours and somebody that's given his, 100% to this borough that's been here 16 years not get nothing. I think maybe bump, give them an hourly, increase, each officer. The part-timers, that is, yeah. Because I don't think it's fair for somebody that just started, that's just out of the academy, gets $2,000, like I said. And you get one guy that's been here a long time and he's not getting nothing because he's only here 3 days a week. And he has put 100% into this borough.
Can you help quantify that by our next meeting so we have a number to put to that would make sense?
You mean what each part-timer works?
So we could place it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's my opinion on that.
Go back to what the motion was, find out somehow. That would be way back in.
At least 2 years.
I have it written down, what was that date, 18 or something?
Yeah,
February of.
but
19.
we could always just resend that motion.
Yeah, but if it was just a motion, then we could just say, I mean, do you want to do that? I mean, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things in my app.
Well,
Yeah, I think my point in bringing this up was that there's nothing in the budget for that currently. So if we were to continue the past practice, we'd have to add money to the budget for that.
we
So,
want fair equity for all.
I think we should put something in there for now as a placeholder to research and come back to.
Has that actually been happening? Have we been paying them the $2,000 bonus
I don't think we
since
have.
18 or 19 or whenever this happened?
Would have been in the budget.
I think the chief said they got it.
Oh,
I found out about this potential line item because the chief told me that the line item exists, not because I found a policy or anything particularly about it. So I do know that the chief received a bonus and he said it was paid in January. When I checked the general ledger for 2021, it's not so clear, like it doesn't say bonus, but there is one paycheck that seems to be significantly higher than the other ones. And so I'm going to make the assumption that without having, we weren't using paychecks back in January. So I don't have access to the previous payroll system. Okay, so I don't know.
No, it's just for the part-timers.
No, it was just for the part-time.
That's not, I don't believe that's the way the motion was made. I believe the motion was made. We need more research then. I believe the motion was made for all officers.
No, no.
I think we need to research that and maybe try to find that motion.
You do need to research it. I just want to ask whether or not you want to put a placeholder in the column on the tape for right now as you're going forward. I'm gonna map. Christine, I saw you type and then erase and then type and then erase.
Do you have more, Dave?
No, I think we can research this and find out what we've been doing, at least what we did in January of 2021. I think it would be a potential increase in expense from the current budget.
You guys put a placeholder in there.
Yeah.
right now.
So I think for now, $10,000, I think is a prudent amount to put in there for that.
If he has three, well, if it's
Well-
what I think it is, 3 full-timers and one that's putting in 32 hours and that'd be 4.
Yeah, I mean, we could probably speculate all night, but I think we need to research it. And then this just,
Research what it was said.
Well,
Yeah.
Who has the research on it? Where we
It'll
gonna
be in
get
the minutes
this?
somewhere.
I mean, we need to find it in the minutes before we do anything with this budget. Because I'm not gonna pay somebody that works. I'm not gonna pay an officer $2,000 that, doesn't work hardly anything.
They have to work the 32 hours a week.
But like I says, I got a gentleman here that worked, been here 16 years and he's getting nothing. And he's very dedicated to
I
this borough.
understand that, and I agree with you. But if the motion was made for you have to work 32 hours, that's what the motion is. That's the way it is. That's why we need to research it before we start getting upset at each other.
And historically, the reason that motion was made is because we were desperately looking for police officers
Right,
at that
absolutely.
time. So their base
That was
pay,
kind of a bonus.
the part-timers went from $16 an hour to $20 an hour.
Right.
Like 25% raise.
Right.
And then the other thing was to attract them was to do that, the bonus. But I'm not understanding why the chief who's on a salary
I
getting all
believe it was
kind of.
all, I believe it was whole police department.
No, that's not my understanding.
So you are setting policy when you finally make this decision. That's true. So you're not gonna approve a budget until you set that policy, but you're also making a financial plan. And you're just getting this is your broad strokes tonight. So that's it. That's all I have to say.
Nobody could hear you online.
Christine, we did add something. We talked about it a bunch, the parking tickets. It was that one of the first ones. I'm just making sure we captured it.
So you're saying if we wanted to go from $5 to $10 for a parking ticket?
Potentially, I mean, we could talk about other policies. I mean, perhaps, having Annette do more of like circulating for the 2-hour parking in the business district or things like that.
Should be $10 an hour.
And I think there's been some issues with the fire parking in front of a fire hydrant, which is only 10. So can you scroll up so we can just see what we capture that at?
This, what we have for what?
331-170 parking tickets borough. Oh, okay,
She
sorry.
was talking about scrolling up above.
I mean, if you want specific line items, it's on a different tab.
No, I'm sorry. I meant where you were. Just if you could scroll up to the first couple items that we added earlier.
40,000.
Yeah, perfect, perfect.
We did not double the parking tickets.
Okay, great.
So I can add in a potential revenue of policy change.
So when you're talking parking tickets, are you talking 2-hour parking?
Well, there's all.
I'm talking, however, we got to 28,000 in 2020. However, we did that. We want to do more of that and maybe even more than that.
It's a dynamic number though, so if we're looking at from 5 to 10.
331-170.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah, I would believe that to be a dynamic number. So to put, I don't know if it's going to be a $1,200 or a $1,400 increase, but you're going to have to take a look at how many violations were made at what rate, and then take a look at the math to be doubled on that portion only.
We probably don't want to be chief's last reports because it's all on there.
We're only at 3,000 for 2022. So that could be $25,000 if we just repeated what we did in 2020.
So can I speak to that, Trish? So Trish was saying that right now that parking tickets borough line item 331-170 is at 3,250. It was in 2020, 28,376. My only comment there, like Christine mentioned, we don't have the QuickBooks records for the 2020 and prior. So that could have been coding, like there could have been other revenue items that were coded. We could have gotten, I mean, who knows what that got coded to that category. Maybe violations of ordinance got thrown in there. We don't really know. So I don't know if I'm all for looking into how we could, maybe bolster that revenue, but I don't know that we necessarily will be able to determine exactly how we got the 28,000 in 2020. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, if you look at the total for fines and forfeits, again, it's across the board. So the 2350, Trish, under parking tickets is obviously way lower, but up above violations of ordinances, we put in 10,500. So that is increasing the total across the board, not as high as past years, but again, David's right. We don't know where things were put in the past year, Gianna.
Like the mayor said, there was no tickets given out.
Right. That's what I was gonna say. We weren't ticketing, for street sweeping, no tickets were given out. So I think that's a good part of the revenue too. People, we weren't street sweeping, we weren't ticketing. Yes.
Right now, Dave, are you done from the finance committee?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, as a placeholder here, we can put in $2,000 if there's a policy change to raise the parking ticket fee from $5 to $10. I think we can safely say we'll bring in an additional $2,000 if that's a policy decision. So it's just a placeholder. Decisions can be made at a later date. And the answer to where are we now after adding these additional changes? We're at -233 and change.
So I'd like to bite the bullet and address the elephant in the room. Looking here at the very end, page 10, right above where it says total expenditures is the transfer to the sewer fund. It's $100,000. And I want to pay the sewer fund back. I'm just not sure that this year we can spend $100,000. I don't want to spend nothing. But I'm gonna propose and put out there for people maybe to think about and discuss whether we want to consider $75,000 to the sewer fund or $50,000 to the sewer fund. And that would decrease our expenditures by a considerable amount. So we can talk about that one issue, and then I have another one to follow up.
We talked about that last night. Didn't we discuss, didn't we discuss going down to 55,000?
Yeah, it was at the end of the night, and I think I might not have gotten the notes because we rushed, we were kind of. Yeah, it was at the end of the night. We discussed that briefly, and I didn't have notes on that. I think maybe I may have missed it because we were rushing to finish up and get to bed. But that's fine to include that in, and I don't think any of us on the committee have an issue with including that for consideration.
No, we're gonna have to pay it back.
But I'm just curious, why 55 instead of just 50?
Just the number that was come up.
They surround, I don't know, I just like.
What are the repercussions to not paying the 100? Just to understand for everybody to know. The repercussions for not paying the 100.
Just takes you longer to pay it back.
So rate of payment.
And reduces what you have for current expenditures in future years. So how fast do you want to be free of that? Is the question you're asking.
Yeah, so what Susan's saying is that the question is how fast do we want to pay back the sewer fund? You know, we have an amount, I think it's 551.
Yeah.
Roughly $550,000 that we owe to the sewer fund from the general fund. So
We're not paying interest though, on that, right? No.
Ray asked if we're paying interest. We are not paying interest. This is money we owe ourselves. You know, it's as if we took it out of, you know, one of our savings account to plug our checking account. And we said we were going to have this much in our savings account. We need to pay it back. But if we take that 550,000, we can pay it back over 10 years, 5 years, 2 years. It's sort of like a car loan with 0% interest. You know, how big do you want your annual payments or monthly payments to be, and how long do you want to take to pay it back? Because the longer you take, the more financial discipline you need to stick with that.
I just want to suggest a clarifying point to what you said, Dave. It's not so much that you took it out of your savings and put it into your checking. It's you basically used your sewer fees to defer the tax increase that you're talking about right now because you needed current revenue in your general fund. So it's more, to me, it's more like taking from the home improvement fund and using it for vacation, right? It's still your income coming in, but it's not like you took it from your savings. You just used it for a purpose other than what was intended. And you can't do that because it's not yours. It's the borough's, and your accounting rules and DCED report specify how you have to do things. And now you're getting back in compliance at whatever rate you guys determine, but you have to get back in compliance with those rules. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Does anybody else want to speak to that? And can we make it 50,000 instead of 55?
We have 55, if we have 551, why don't we make it 51?
And 2 cents. Oh, yeah, we'll change that, get rid of that 23 cents, we'll round it so it's a nice even amount. How about that? So the one thing I wanted to say about the sewer repayment is this. One, if we are not going to increase sewer rates this year, which I think is a good idea, although I'm not voting, but I do think it's a good idea, then what it means is our sewer fund balance is not going to be growing at the same rate as it was in prior years. And what that means is, well, there are two things. One, Alcoasand is looking to regionalize, and this is something that is happening now. It's not happening in 5 years. I really like, I mean, there are conversations I've been on with Alcoasand and Matt. That's really like a 2022 activity. And so if there are major projects that need done to the sewer system, we need to be able to pay for that out of the sewer fund. And if the sewer fund does not have a fund balance to support that, not even fund balance, a cash balance to support that, i.e. money in the bank, in the sewer fund to pay for those projects, then the sewer fund is going to come knocking on the door of the general fund and say, pay up because we have major sewer capital projects that need to be done. So to me, part of the risk in delaying repayment of the sewer fund and reducing that, you know, much less than, I mean, if it has to be 50, it has to be 50. This isn't my decision. But my point is, you know, in addition to not kicking the can down the road and just, you know, just rip the Band-Aid off and pay it back. We just don't want to set ourselves up for basically the exact same problem if there is something significant that needs to be repaired within the sewer fund.
Did you want to?
I'm gonna go back to the police when you're done. All right.
Okay. Well, thanks for spelling that out, Christine. And I'm not sure that I am a fan of kicking the can down the road, but I am looking at the time and I'm looking at our number here. If you take the 45 off, whatever, we're at $188,000, $188,500. So at this point, unless somebody has any major expenditure suggestions of what to eliminate, then this figure right here dictates that even just to have a minor minimum fund balance at the end of the year means we would need to raise taxes by 2 mils. Does anybody disagree with that statement or have something?
I don't disagree with that, but I just want to clarify, this does not include a minimum fund balance policy in here. So if we were to take, for example, the 5% of our operating revenues that Christine mentioned in her slide, I believe our operating revenue, I mean, they're around 2 million proposed for 2022. If we took 5% of that, I believe that's $100,000. So if we wanted to have that $100,000 fund balance at the end of 2022, it would need to be 3 mils. I mean, I'm just saying that as an example. I mean, council will need to decide what our policy is for the fund balance, how much we want to have available at the end of the year as a rainy day fund. And I will just add, this reminds me back to something I thought of during her presentation. A lot of our, just seeing how the revenues and expenditures go throughout the year. January and February are pretty tough months because there's expenditures happening, but there's no revenue, very little revenue coming in because we're not getting hit with the, or getting, you know, reaping the rewards of the property taxes until starting in March. We start to get a big influx of money in March, April, May, and then it sort of trickles off throughout the year. And then, like Christine mentioned, there's a little bit of a bounce back at the end of the year, but there's a lot of stuff that comes due at the end of the year. So we get a lot of expenses, or maybe some extra expenses at the end of the year that are maybe annual things or quarterly things. And then they may even trickle into January, and then we're not getting the revenue to back that up. So I think having seen where we were in January of this past year with a cash balance of like $25,000 in the general fund, that was just too close for comfort. And we got ourselves, like Susan mentioned, we got ourselves back in a better position since then. And we've put in the policies and the controls, internal controls, so that doesn't sort of happen. But the last step there is to set a fund balance policy that's going to give us a buffer in those early months of the year to follow. So I just wanted to add that.
Do you have a different suggestion, a different proposal? I'm just throwing that out there because it's 9:45 at night And I'm looking at the numbers. I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, Nancy's asking if I have a different proposal, and I don't have a different proposal. I think we have to, for now, unless someone else has some big addition to this list, this tape, we're gonna have to put in a tax increase to balance the budget, and that doesn't even account for the fund balance policy, which could drive that up further.
Put a question to the group. Christine, you're gonna put a number in here about what that minimum fund balance would be. It's gonna be a negative number. How you get there would still be on the table. But Dave, I'm hearing you say 5% is 100,000. But you're also concerned about liquidity during the year. Is that 100,000 enough to get through the leanest part of the year? I think that's a research question. Christine, if you can add that. And then I want to take the temperature of council about 100,000 as a minimum fund balance for Verona Borough.
Temperature for me is this is basic math that we find ourselves having to do after a long time. We've had a long streak of not having incremental millage increases. We have a community that demands the amenities that we deserve. And we find ourselves in the most uncomfortable of conversations right now. This is, I think, my 10th hour with this group of 4 here. We're at hour 3 of this evening. Unless anyone else has line items in these 10 pages that you have reviewed that you find, I don't know what other math there is. And this is, to a degree, it's embarrassing, but it's also enlightening. Like one of our residents said, like, well, at least we know. I mean, it's in the day of light. Let's address it. Let's know what it is. And let's tackle this, because it has, however you want to say it, we've kicked the can. It's been year after year. We've put it forward. We finally have our books straight, it appears. And it is very eye-opening.
So should Christine put a negative 100,000 in that cell?
If that is the best practice of how communities operate as they should, and we need to be where we need to be, I don't know if anyone else, what's 3 months look like?
Well, that's the research question.
Okay, well, either one of those two numbers is how a community should operate. So I don't have any opposition to having those pieces on there. I mean, we should function as a community where we have the things we need, including our finances in the order they need to be in.
So I don't disagree. But in the same vein as my proposal about the sewer fund payment paying back the sewer fund, the best thing to do would be to be able to give 100,000, but I don't know how we can do that. So if we made the minimum fund balance 75 or 50, then maybe we could reduce the tax increase by a little bit.
I want to differentiate what you're saying. You're not giving. This is your wealth that you have at the end of your operations. It's not 50,000 that you're giving over to the sewer fund or $50,000 in spending. The question is, how much do you want to have in the bank, wealth of the community at the end?
I know.
So going to 50 is that enough money to have in your rainy day fund? That's the question. And I didn't really hear your answer, Joey. If 100 was good, and then Christine, I saw you typed in 200. So I'm not sure where the conversation's going. And I hear you, Nancy, with the 50, but I just want to make that one more.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm simply putting out there that the proposals going around over the last weeks and months has been 100,000 for the sewer payment and 100,000 minimum fund balance. That's $200,000. But can we consider something a little less than that? And I don't know. Otherwise, again, as people have said, I don't know where else we find the money other than raising taxes a lot.
I just wanted to clarify why I put $200,000 in the minimum fund balance. If we are saying 3 months worth of expenses, I can tell you there are basically 2 payrolls per month. Sometimes there are 3. One payroll, depending on overtime and things of that ilk, is between like $21,000 and $23,000. So if we just like round out to 25, because that's easier to do that math at 10 o'clock at night, then it's $50,000 just in payroll each month. So times 3 months is $150,000. And then that leaves $50,000 to pay for miscellaneous doodads that are needed throughout the borough to, just ensure regular operations. So that's where the $200,000 came from. And I can do additional research, but this is just a placeholder. And I kind of wanted to set expectations that a minimum fund balance of $100,000 is really not adequate if we're trying to not tap into other resources until property taxes and people file their personal income taxes and EIT starts to roll in April.
So do it right when you do it. Don't just plug a hole.
Okay, so are you saying 3 months, I mean, December, January, February? What 3 months are we talking about?
January, February, March.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I mean, some property tax starts coming in March, but.
But you also said you get a little boost at the end of the year.
So this 51,000 at the fund balance estimate, negative 51,000. Is that what you're showing up there now as a 183, 188?
Yes, so this is saying that.
Or is you saying that 51,800, is that the 200,000 you just put in, you want to keep it at?
What are you talking about? 51,800?
The very last number.
Do you want to know why there's a 188 up there?
I think I know why. I mean, because of we're working, we were down and then it went back up. My question is the 51,870 is a year-end general fund.
Where are you looking at?
That's the very last line under exposed.
Page 10.
Page 10.
Gray lines, middle gray line.
Got it. Mhm.
Is this 51,870 the representation of the minimum fund balance of 200,000? Or is that the 188,460?
No, that's the opening fund balance rate. The closing fund balance is the 370,160 that we started with.
Yeah.
So-
We're down to, with raising taxes, with going up to 2 mils, we're down to the 370 then. From the 370, we're down to 188. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
After the
yes.
Conversation tonight and yellow, that's where we would find ourselves if we all agree to where that lands.
What you said. I have nothing else to add. I was just going to clarify where that came from.
Yeah, I want to go back to the police. I understand you're going to cut the part-time or the full-timer out. I totally understand that. It's very frustrating for me though, and I'm trying to build a police department with two officers on every shift, but that's not going to happen, it looks like. But at least give me some, at least 2 part-timers that I could hire to help fill in some gaps and help alleviate some of the overtime that some of these officers are getting.
Do we know what that would, I mean, we have to figure out a number to plug in place of the full timer. I mean, this is not set in stone.
I do understand that. I do understand. I just get frustrated because like I said, every year I come back here to the board, even before most of you, in fact, even before most of you were on. And I just, keep saying, it's a wish list that I don't get. But then then you turn around and I know that's not set in stone too, but you're gonna buy the street department, give them $40,000 to buy some equipment. I mean, that they could rent per year, per incident, at $1,000 a week.
This is what the conversation's for.
I understand and I appreciate that. I just get real frustrated. We bought 2 cars and I don't want to go into that again that I was unaware of. And we overpaid for 2 of them. And I just get really frustrated right now. So whoever wants to.
I hope you have a confidence in a newer.
I hope you find confidence in a newer council, a more involved community. And I'd have the same frustrations too. I've only been here a couple of months in my role. I've only lived here for 3 years, but I can very much appreciate that. And this is the place to speak to these lines of the budget. What I hear you saying then is, if there's a $75,000 total cost for a new officer full-time, you're proposing that we do math that you'd provide that shows what the cost would be for part-time minus all those 4 lines of all the other pieces that follow just simply the salary. So we're gonna have a net savings of about how much do you think?
I honestly don't know.
Okay, well, that's something I think that could be a math problem for now until we meet next, and just know that the suggestion for the need we have, we can do it in the math and add it to the yellow.
Mayor, I have a question. When you say you want 2 more part-timers, do you mean to put them on shifts with other guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so not just to fill in,
Right.
but if I'm not, I'm not against that. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but if I'm not mistaken, we can't even get people to apply. Am I right?
Well, the problem is. The problem is there are people coming out of the academy. That's where we got the one officer from. He's doing fine. The chief doesn't feel that he wants somebody in there that already has the experience. And I keep coming back with, you started as a rookie also. This young man is doing a great job that we have now. And there's others out there. I want to hire from the academy. Plain and simple.
So you're saying there's precedence to having an investment in a new officer and them performing in.
Also find a cost savings in not having a new full-time, but a compromise with.
A compromise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just think, I would say that could be a potential compromise to hire 2 part-time officers that would maybe cost less overall, but still fulfill the mayor's wish to have 2 officers on every shift. It comes down to priorities, and I think we can think about this more after looking at this list after tonight. And, we don't have to do any of the things on this list, but, I mean, I'm just gonna be blunt, even if we don't do the skid steer or not, I'm sorry, not the skid steer. That was on the capital projects, but if we, if we keep the full-time officer in there, for instance, we're still looking at a tax increase, that we're gonna have to find other cuts somewhere else. So do we prioritize that over other things and find other things to cut? Or, for instance, even if we don't do a capital purchase for DPW, which we don't have to do, we're still looking at a 1.5 instead of a 2 mil increase or whatever it may be, so those are the things we have to weigh. And I don't feel great about cutting certain things. I don't feel great. I mean, some of these maybe are easy ones that we might all easily agree on, but I don't feel great about it. But the alternative I'm seeing right now is a larger millage increase. So I'm all ears for other ideas, but this is just the difficult position we're in.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, at some point, we want to go back and take more public comment for the end of the evening, correct?
I did figure out what I wanted.
Oh.
How, is there a limit to how much you can raise them, how many mills we can raise this? I believe there is, so we have to watch that too.
There's a maximum for a borough.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're close to that cap, but that's one of your research questions.
Okay, that's, I knew there was something there, and I'm not sure of the number.
From 2019 to 2020, with the 131 municipalities, I think it was about 20 or so that increased their millage for what I could see on the public website. One of them raised it 29 mills. Second most was 14 mills. Another community did 7 mills. This is not a nuclear option. This is not going to devastate Verona. This is not to the extreme other places have seen. Now that's a very complicated math problem for those other communities. I'm sure 29 mills might look different than what we see here, but I just want to say that's not out of the ordinary to increase millage. I don't know what it looked like in 2021. I don't know what it's looking like for this upcoming year for other communities, but it's not out of the ordinary to make this investment into the community with, increase to millage.
Well, so I want to suggest we take the public comment. Just a couple of things. So this is hard. You've done hard work. I want to commend you guys. It's very transparent and you still have a lot of work to do next week at your next workshop, but you've got it all written down. Some of this stuff will come off, maybe something more will come on. That's the job. That's the job. You're just doing the job. So let's open it back up for additional public comment.
Thanks, Susan.
I'll be short. I'm not gonna drag this out any more than we have. Right now, no one has mentioned a comprehensive plan. That was one of my goals when I was on council before. Okay, I had CMU students come twice, and we're talking at least $75,000 for a company to do the job. I know in Aspinwall, we were looking, I think they spent like 150, which I know is a lot. And again, they have more territory, more, things to address than we do. Also, you should investigate insurance prices. When I was on council before, I investigated the different companies because insurance rates change year to year. And there was a savings of over $20,000 by switching to, we went to Community Blue. So that needs to be investigated too, because you can save a lot of money for all the employees, all the benefits that we pay. And I know we get money for 360 homes from Penn Hills. They use our source system. And when nobody was collecting that, and we were getting $35 per household, and it was supposed to change to 50, which with cost of living should even be higher now. So that's something to look into. And code enforcement is so crucial. If we're paying BIU 29,000, we can share services with another municipality. It is crucial that we have good code enforcement. Thank you.
Is anybody on Zoom who want to speak? I'm not seeing any hands right at the moment. Okay, Kim Roller. Okay, go ahead, Kim.
Hey, everyone. Thank you again for the long meeting today. I know we're going to be doing it again next week. But one thing I wanted to ensure that we're doing when it comes into DPW and the officers and what we're doing as a borough as a whole is to continue to work smarter and not harder. I know that there's some times where we have actually requested certain things from DPW or different areas, and we've asked for things to be done and they have to be either redone or they've been forgotten and we have to go back and do it again. Specifically, things have been said, do it this way because it's the smartest thing to do. And then it's done one way and then we come back again. We need to make sure that that is something that we're keeping track of for borough workers and, the community as a whole, because we'll be able to save money in an hourly standpoint. And maybe we'll see that in a difference as well.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you. Anybody else from public, from Zoom or otherwise? Okay. Oh, Jess, go ahead, Jess.
Hi. I guess I'm just hearing a lot of folks from the public talk about not wanting to raise taxes to balance the budget this year. And I guess my question to them is, when would be a good time to raise taxes? If we haven't made a change to that millage and the amount of money that the public is contributing to our infrastructure and building a stronger community. And what was it, like 12 years? It was a long time. When is the time for us to step up and say that Verona is worth investing in? I think, you guys spent a lot of time talking about small little amounts here and there if the line item changes, and that's great. You're doing really hard work to try to save and scrimp wherever possible. But at the end of the day, we're going to need a significant amount of money to be financially solvent. So I don't think that's going to come from us raising a few fees and cutting expenses at a conference or something. I think I'm ready to step up and invest in Verona, and just wanted to share my opinion there. Thanks.
Thanks, Jess. Dan.
Can folks hear me?
Yeah.
Okey doke. I myself can say as somebody that is opposed to the raising of taxes is actually this past year, I got to give credit, there has been good governance. I myself, at a basic minimum, would want one more year of good governance before I'd be willing for the government to reach into my back pocket. I understand taxes have not been raised in many, many years. And maybe 8-10 years ago, that idea should have been thought through. But at this point, after previous councils and the mismanagement, all I'm asking for is a couple of years, just a couple of years of proper management of this borough before I can trust you again. That's all I'm asking for. I don't think it's a big ask. Have a good night.
Thanks, Dan. Anybody else? I don't see any hands at this time. Someone do you want to?
No, I just. Yeah, no, I just want to check in. Sylvia, Janet, you've been quiet. We haven't heard too much from you. I want to give you an opportunity to comment if you have anything to say, and then maybe you all can just pass the mic around. Keep it to 1 or 2 words, just where you're at right now for your colleagues.
I think time will tell where we go. We just need to make strong, right decisions right now. We're in the middle of a situation. We're not going to put a blanket over it. We have to move forward, and we need to do what we need to do. We're responsible. We've been voted in, and we have to do what is in the best interest of everybody, not just us on the board here, but an entire community. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a very good discussion tonight. Got to hear a lot. We did a lot of work, and there's still some work to be done, and hopefully we can come to a balanced budget. Thank you.
A lot of things have been said tonight. I don't care if you raise the taxes $0.25 or 2 mils. I don't want them to raise, but it sure doesn't seem like there's any much we can do without the increase. And, we can sit here and blame last year's government, 3 years ago's government, 10 years ago's government, whatever. This is a situation we're in, and we got to get Verona out of it and keep going forward somehow, some way. And I understand people are going to be upset. Listen, it's hitting our pocketbooks too. So it's not like it's just hitting the residents. It's hitting us too. So we got a lot of good suggestions. Maybe we can, I don't know, sit down and try to figure it out.
So like I said earlier, this is, I think the 10th hour this group of 4 is focused on this 10-page document. I appreciate the conversation with council and residents tonight. I hope everyone recognizes the due diligence we've taken to look at every single line and understand what we can do as already operating as a very, very lean community fiscally, and know that we're going to make the most responsible choice that we need to for all of us. I appreciate the dialogue, and I look forward to it as our conversations move forward. And I know that we are better than where we were last year. And I look forward to this conversation this time next year and looking back to what decisions we made together to make sure that we're in the right direction.
Yeah, just echo the other sentiments expressed by my colleagues here on council. I think we still have some work to do by looking at the final tape number. But I think this was a good process. I think this is just in the way we've conducted this budget process just so far this year compared to past years, I feel like is a huge improvement. And I hope that that the public feels that way as well. I appreciate each and every one of the comments from everyone, the public, council, mayor, Susan, Christine, everyone here. Everyone's participated, and I think that's the best way to have this, is to have everyone participate and engaged as a community to figure out what our priorities and policies are. So thanks, everyone.
Just want to echo what a lot of people have already said, and thank you to Susan specifically for facilitating the vast majority of this meeting. I really do appreciate that. And thank you to, council and mayor for, letting me be an active participant in this conversation. I really do care about Verona. I think it's a really great place, and I'm excited to see where Verona is going to go. And I know this is a hard conversation. It's certainly not over, but I appreciate everybody just really sitting around this table and looking at each other as we speak, and really showing that humanity and showing that empathy and compassion. And so thank you all for, just participating and letting me participate, and to be continued.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to extend a round of appreciation for all of you, and also for implementing the setup. I thought this was, as Dave mentioned, this was probably one of the most engaging budget discussions I'm aware of us having in a long time. And I thought it was really easy to share thoughts very openly and honestly. And so we're definitely making progress, definitely way better than last year. Like Ray said, of course, I was advocating for not increasing taxes at all, but, looking at this, obviously, we put in a lot of due diligence, and I, invite the public. We have copies that are on the website, are in the borough building. I mean, please be an active participant. If, folks really feel strongly about not raising taxes, please help us, because we're doing everything we can. And this is the math problem that we wound up with. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Just like to thank everyone and echo everyone's comments and thoughts. I think this was a very informative gathering tonight, and thank everyone and the audience for participating.
Thanks, everybody. Of course, I'm going to reiterate everything everyone has said about appreciating this discussion tonight. I actually think this is the most profoundly respectful, open discussion that I have ever been a part of as long as I've lived in Verona. So I appreciate everybody, from council to the mayor, Susan, Christine, the people who came in person, the people on Zoom, and even Mike over there for hanging with us all this time. This warms my heart to have been a part of this tonight. I also want to ditto what Sylvia said, that we need to do what is best for the community as a whole. And obviously, we're all part of the community. We would be paying the higher taxes as well. And I wanted to point out that in this draft, it does not include, right, Christine, $100,000 minimum fund balance in it. That does not include, it does include a $100,000 payback to the sewer fund. If we take that out, the $100,000 payback to the sewer fund, just off the top, we're still negative $270,000. And I want everyone to be aware of that. If we pay nothing back, if we have zero minimum fund balance, we're still in the hole. So anybody who doesn't want to raise taxes, I appreciate that and understand what you're saying, but I'd ask you to please give us your solution, because I don't know where else we can go. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, just want to remind you that you're doing policy work, financial work, you're figuring out the operations next year, and you are making a financial plan. So you're doing that and communicating with the public. So last time we did our training, we talked about you becoming a council of one and mission-ish. And I'm seeing you really work hard to do that. And I want to commend you for that. So thank you for allowing me to participate in your discussion.
And at this point, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Sylvia, Mr. Suchovich, all those in favor, please say aye. Okay. Okay, help yourself to cookies.